When something horrific happens, the internet never forgets. Except when it does. Sometimes tragedy leaves no trail behind. No video, no audio, no final record that it ever happened at all. Every recording erased, every copy destroyed or sealed away by someone who decided the public was never meant to see it. And the reason is always the same. What was captured was too disturbing, too violent, or too heartbreaking to be released into the world. Today, we are getting into the horrors of lost media. Not creepy cartoons or vanished TV shows, but real footage tied to real tragedy. Moments so dark they were buried and quietly forgotten. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let's get into it. Clear Man. One of the more popular, long-standing reality TV shows is also a brutal one. You may have heard of it. Survivor. A show that debuted in 2000 on CBS. A show where contestants are thrown into the wilderness with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They have to find food, shelter, and form relationships with other contestants to avoid getting kicked off. The members all compete in mental and physical challenges, where winning provides them immunity from elimination. The last man standing takes home $1 million. The show has aired 50 seasons since 2000, but that's just in America. There are actually around 40 adaptations around the world, but not all adaptations have been successful. In 2009, Pakistan decided to jump on board and create their version of Survivor. It was set with an all-male cast, and while produced for Pakistani television, it was to be filmed in Thailand. The show was sponsored by Unilever, a huge Pakistani company that produces and sells personal care products. Wanting to market their new shampoo brand, which went by the name of Clear Shampoo, they named the show Clear Man. Interesting name. Apparently, the winner would be given the title of Clear Man and presumably prize money. I couldn't find how much the prize money was, but according to the internet, there was prize money. I hope it was substantial so the winner got more than just that title of Clear Man. But there was one man who wasn't interested in the title or the money. Let's meet our first contestant, Saad Khan. Saad signed up for the show not to win something, but for the challenge. He was living a pretty normal life in a quiet part of Pakistan. He worked at a bank, went home to a wife and 4 young kids. Everything was routine. The prospect to flying to Thailand, living in the wilderness, competing against other men, it was exciting for Saad. He was a family man who wanted to see what the world had to offer, and he felt ready for any challenge the show gave to him. Saad gave it his all. He quickly became very popular on the show, many of the other contestants becoming good friends with him. They were actually quite sad when Saad was eliminated in episode 4. Members were challenged to successfully throw a basketball into a net 10 feet above the ground while standing on an ice block. This proved to be difficult for Saad, and after his failure, he was sent home. Or so the other contestants thought. Nobody knew that producers had actually put Saad up in a hotel near the filming location. And for episode 10, they sent Saad back for a final appearance, a last chance at redemption. His friends on the show were excited to have him back, happy to have their friend back competing with them. They thought the final episode would be another fun challenge. But producers had different ideas. For the final episode, contestants were asked to run through a fiery path, swim through a pond, and climb a rope, all with a 15-pound bag of sand on their back. Which feels insane to me, but I digress. Now let's not forget, Saad went on to Clear Man for the challenge, the thrill, the adventure, and that he was given. It was a hot day. The contestants stood there, sweating, waiting for the buzzer to go off. Saad was focused, ready for anything. He was going to claim that prize no matter the cost. The buzzer sounded, and he was off. He made it through the fire, going as fast as he could through the flames. Then came the pond, which contestants believed was not very deep. So, Saad felt safe entering the water, even though he was exhausted, slowed down by the sandbag. And he was doing a great job making his way across the water, determined to make it to the other side. But then he started to backstroke. And this is when his friends noticed something was wrong. Saad started to sink, and he panicked. He cried out for help, scared, desperate for someone to get him. Others yelled out that he needed to open his backpack, remove some of the weight. But Saad had pulled a muscle, and even worse, a strap from the sandbag had gotten tied around his ankles. And as he was sinking deeper into the water, splashing and trying to stay afloat, he couldn't get himself free. And just like that, he was under the surface. Other contestants jumped into the pond to try and save him, but the water was muddy. They had no idea where he was. And even worse than muddy, it was deep. Whatever the producers said about the pond being shallow and safe, it was a lie. As the other contestants were desperately looking for Saad, the realization sunk in. They had been lied to. After 10 minutes of tirelessly trying to find Saad, lifeguards finally arrived on the scene, and Saad was pulled out of the water, but he had already passed away. Everyone was in shock. What was supposed to be an adventure turned into a tragedy. A tragedy that no one wanted to take the blame for. The spokeswoman for Unilever made a statement denying that Saad's death was the company's fault. And although major news outlets in Pakistan were suspiciously slow to report on the tragic death, which most believe was Unilever allegedly actively paying people hush money, bloggers and independent journalists were quick to spread the story to try and get justice for Saad. Teeth Maestro, a group of bloggers, gave an opportunity for another contestant to share his perspective and opinion on what happened. When asked about safety precautions, he said, quote, "No, there was nothing present over there. We are given the surety that the pond is not very deep, and there was only first aid help in case of injury. No professional divers, no lifeguards, and no snorkelers. We only realized after this incident that during the 10 episodes, a similar incident could have happened with any of the participants, as precautionary and safety measures were non-existent. We never thought on these lines, maybe because of the comfort level we had on the big brand organizers, managers, and sponsors which were associated with this show. I wish Saad would have remained eliminated in order to avoid all what happened. Negligence and carelessness was the cause of Saad's death." What happened to Saad was preventable. He could still be here. If only the production company or someone from Unilever, anyone at all, took the extra time to make sure these challenges were safe. But they were more focused on making money, on filming dramatic content that would sell. It didn't matter if the contestants were safe, they needed to sell their shampoo. Because of their negligence, a father and a husband lost his life. So was anyone held responsible? Did anyone do any jail time for what happened on Clearman? Well, maybe someone would have if all the evidence hadn't disappeared. Not just the footage of Saad's death, but the entire show. Not a single episode from the show saw the light of day, which may be for the best. I wouldn't want anyone in production to make a cent. But it does leave some very unnerving questions. What were the other challenges? Was there anything else that was overtly dangerous that the company doesn't want us to see? Were the producers throwing these people into life or death situations without them realizing? And why did they lock up the footage? Was there, anything revealing or incriminating on that footage? Saad's family thought so. They requested to see it, but the request was denied. Why? Was there something they wanted to hide? Further evidence that Saad's death was on their hands? Well, I guess we'll never know. The other challenges were probably just as dangerous. And because of the lax legal protections in Pakistan, not a single person ever saw jail time for the incident. Hopefully, Saad's family receives justice in some way, because either the production company or Unilever, or better yet both, deserve to be held accountable. Daniel V. Jones. On April 30th, 1998, Everything was normal as usual in Los Angeles, California. The weather was perfect spring weather, not too hot, not too cold. The people of LA were living their everyday lives, enjoying the sun, out and about, perhaps going to the park or taking a hike. But on the way down LA's highways, navigating heavy traffic, some may have been interrupted, stopped by a man in crisis. At around 3 p.m. that day, Daniel Jones parked his truck on a transition loop on the Harbor Freeway and prepared for his final moments. Daniel was 40 years old, spending his days in Long Beach, California, working maintenance at a hotel. He lived a quiet life with his Labrador in a 2-bedroom bungalow, tucked away in an alley along the coast. But his simple, peaceful life came to a halt when he had received terrible news. Earlier that year, Daniel had encountered some health problems, among them a flesh-colored growth on his neck. Hoping for the best, Daniel went to the doctor, but he walked out of that doctor's office, distraught, hopeless, and not sure where to turn. Daniel was diagnosed with cancer, as well as HIV. At first, Daniel went through the options. It didn't seem as if there were many, but he wanted to give it his best shot. The problem was Daniel was a low-income worker. His job as a maintenance worker, while exhausting and backbreaking, did not put him in a great financial position. He couldn't afford a premium healthcare plan. What he could afford was an HMO, which was a pretty terrible plan to have in his situation. HMOs can be okay for some, but usually for people that typically just need preventative care. Something like cancer and HIV, these things require specialists, appointments months in advance, medical equipment, things that are hard to get with HMO insurance. All of the options that Daniel needed seemed out of reach. He felt helpless, like the world had abandoned him. Even if he wanted to put up a fight, it wasn't just the disease he was up against. It was money, doctors, health insurance. It felt like too much. So on a warm April day on a Los Angeles freeway, Daniel was parked with nothing but a shotgun and his dog, preparing to commit S-word, hoping people would watch in the process. He wanted the world to see what it had done to him. He began by pointing his shotgun at drivers that passed by him, terrifying innocent people on the road. This garnered some attention, prompting people to call the police. It wasn't long until Daniel himself called law enforcement. He wasn't trying to hide, he wanted a scene. During the phone call with 911, he fired off his shotgun multiple times, making it clear that he was serious. He was a danger to himself and others. He talked to the operator, venting about his diagnosis, his insurance, his fate in the hands of doctors he couldn't afford. All of it. I'm not happy with what's happening to my situation, and I'm going to draw attention to it whichever way I can. My paramount goal is for no one other than myself to get hurt. Soon enough, the freeway was shut down. Law enforcement began to circle him, helicopters monitoring him. He had wanted a scene, and he got it. Now that all eyes were on him, he began to give them something to watch. He got out of the truck, walked across the empty highway, and put out a banner he had made for this event. The banner read, "HMOs are in it for the money. Live free, love safe, or die." In these last moments, not only did Daniel feel angry, but trapped. With these diseases, he couldn't be free. I'm not sure what love safe could mean. The speculation could really be endless, but I think it's clear he felt his freedom had been stripped. And now, he thought there was no reason to live. And now that he had shared his message, he went back into his truck, took out a Molotov cocktail, and the truck went up in flames. He stumbled out of the driver's seat on fire, but somehow he managed to pat himself down, peel his pants off, and survive the fiery explosion he created. He was visibly confused, walking around in pain, disoriented and in a daze. Not only that, but angry. He knew the world was watching, and he was pissed off, enraged at the American healthcare system, at the police, at everyone that got to live a life free of disease. Staggering around the freeway, he made obscene gestures, presumably towards the cameras he knew were capturing his every move. He was almost finished. The show was almost over. He looked out over the freeway, down below at the ground, thinking about what that jump would do. But he decided against that. He got off the ledge, went back to his truck, and pulled out his shotgun again. Walking a few feet away from his truck, he leaned the shotgun on the median, put the muzzle underneath his chin, and ended it all. The cameras captured every detail, and the scene was broadcasted onto live television. The helicopters, filled with reporters, were circling Daniel, watching a man's tragic last moments. It was what Daniel wanted, but it feels so wrong. Live free, love safe, or die was his last words. We'll never hear any more from him. Whatever more he had to say was lost forever. At least it would have been, because there were tapes found afterward. At one point, while he was walking around the freeway, he took a bag from his truck and threw it over the wall. Once investigating the scene, police found the bag, and inside was a videotape. All we know of the videotape is that it was some sort of last note from Daniel. All that was made public was that he said, quote, "I'm not going to fight the disease. It has affected my neurological system. I'm not going to end up crazy. I'm a dead man. See ya." The rest is gone forever. I don't know if the police destroyed it, gave it to the family, or it's locked away. But I doubt the general public will ever see it. But it feels like Daniel wanted us to see that. He was in pain. That much is obvious. But his S word was more than just that. It was an outcry, a declaration that he was furious with the way he was treated, that everyone, including him, deserved a chance. A chance he didn't feel like he had. Maybe the tape was only made for family and friends, or maybe he had something more to say to us all. His death was supposed to be a message, and I can't help but wonder if there was more to the man we'll never get to see. I hope, for their sake, his family got to hear his final words he recorded on tape. Mackenzie House. For some people, ghosts only exist in movies. The idea of spirits floating around is nothing more than entertainment. Creaking sounds in an old house, running faucets when no one is home. Well, there's a reasonable explanation, but others will argue that some things are just unexplainable. They hear a distant voice from across the room or feel a cold tap on their shoulder. Well, I don't think anyone will know for sure until they cross over themselves. But for the people of Toronto, there's one big mystery still unsolved. In 1958, William Lyon Mackenzie moved into a two-story brick house on Bond Street in downtown Toronto. For all of his adult life, he was a government man, serving as Toronto's first mayor, but he was ousted when he tried to overthrow the Canadian government. Fighting for Upper Canadian independence from Great Britain, he lost, got arrested, and was exiled to the United States. He lived in New York and worked as a journalist. He was actually almost arrested again for violating US neutrality laws because he was literally forming an army to go fight the Canadian English. Again, he was arrested, this time for 10 months. But that's how passionate he was about Canadian independence. 11 years after his exile, Mackenzie was pardoned, and he returned to Toronto. Once again, he joined the Legislative Assembly of Upper Canada, which is basically the Canadian Congress. He ended up resigning when he decided the government was basically full of it. Nothing had changed, and he'd better stay out of politics. So there he was, starting a new life in his new house, hoping to leave his tumultuous past behind. But very soon after moving in, his health started to decline. Now, Mackenzie was a stubborn guy, so he refused to take any medication. And without medical care, William passed away in 1861, just 2 years after moving in, dying in the comfort of his own home. A home that some wanted to preserve, a monument to honor the memory of the city's first mayor. So William's grandson, William Lyon Mackenzie King, decided to take on that responsibility and make the home a historical site for years to come. His grandson became the Prime Minister of Canada in his first job in office, turning his grandfather's home into a museum. William's grandson hired live-in caretakers to work in the house, responsible for maintaining the museum. Starting out, the caretakers went about their job as normal, cleaning and maintaining the home, enjoying the routine of a simple job and free housing. But this wasn't like any house they had stayed in before. The Mackenzie house was haunted. One caretaker, Miss Edmund, was woken up one night by a soft touching on her shoulder. Quickly opening her eyes, there was a lady standing directly above her, staring right into her eyes. But before she could process what was happening, the lady was gone. It was like she had never been there. Maybe it was a dream, she thought, a reflection, a splotch of light that happened to look like a woman. But then, just a few weeks later, Miss Edmund jolted awake from another tap on the shoulder, and there she was, the lady, staring again, but this time, before she disappeared, she slapped Miss Edmund across the face and vanished. And it wasn't just Miss Edmund that was seeing things in the Mackenzie house. Bruce Beaton, a historical interpreter at the house, was in the home one night when he noticed the printing press operating by itself. But that's not all. A tourist of the museum shares their experience. Quote, "I went to the Mackenzie house 14 years ago, and to this day, I have never forgotten my experience there. I went with my father and sister just to get a feel for Toronto history. I remember walking in the door and saying to the tour guide, before she could say anything to us, 'Who died in this house?' She stated that William Lyon Mackenzie had more than likely died in the house, but there had never been proof of it. Then, as I was going up to the second floor, I had a weird sensation come over me. I looked to the second room, and I saw a young girl, early teens, standing by the dresser. I was convinced that it was his daughter, and the name Elizabeth kept popping into my head. Now, the reason I'm telling this story is because I'm not sure if it was my overactive imagination as a young teen myself, or if it was real. I've experienced many things in my time, but I've never quite been sure if it was just my imagination or a gift. Another thing about the Mackenzie house was the basement, where the kitchen is located. That room just freaked me right out, even from the outside. Enough people were having weird experiences in this house that in 1960, right before the home was bought by the city of Toronto, CBC got a reporter and an archdeacon from the Church of Holy Trinity to walk through the Mackenzie house and perform an exorcism. All of these odd sightings, strange feelings, taps on the shoulders, there was something living in William Mackenzie's Toronto home, and this archdeacon was gonna rid the house of it. The CBC reporters set up their cameras, and when they were rolling, the archdeacon began to pray. They walked the entire home, reciting prayers, blessing the space with holy water, trying to exorcise an unruly spirit. And then the ceremony was done, and finally, the house was quiet. A lot of reporters claim that nothing odd has happened since, and that's sort of true. Nothing like Miss Edmund's experience has happened. But that doesn't mean nothing weird has happened. Someone on a ghost tour says, quote, "I have the Ghost Meter Pro, a handheld EMF reader. It's interesting going upstairs into Mackenzie's bedroom. I didn't pick up any activity, but when I proceeded further to the left-hand side of the room by the front windows where people have claimed to have seen activity from outside on the street, it went off and hit maximum capacity on the meter itself. The meter also went off downstairs by the kitchen area near the front window. People have witnessed movement here, shadows from the street, and things like that through these windows. So I would say the ghost meter is quite accurate." I know some may think that the EMF is a load of nonsense, but I personally have some crazy experiences with it. Honestly, this person's memory of the Mackenzie house sends shivers down my spine. So, are there still ghosts in the Mackenzie house, or was it ever real to begin with? There are supporters on both sides of the argument, and everyone asks the same question. What about the footage? What happened during the taping of the Mackenzie house? I described a little bit of the exorcism, but what actually happened? Was there any paranormal activity? Was anything caught on tape? Well, it would be helpful if we could see the footage, but it's been lost for decades. I don't know if it's destroyed or just forgotten, but it's gone. Lost to the public, never to be seen again. Whatever prayer that archdeacon said, whatever he performed, we'll never be able to see it. We'll never know what happened that day. What we do know, though, is that after the exorcism took place, the building was turned over to the city, and with it, an old list of all artifacts in the house. At the bottom of the list, one chilling item. One ghost. Exorcised. Hopefully, whoever wrote that got their wish after the archdeacon's visit. And if a ghost did exist in the Mackenzie house, it's finally put to rest. And I just wonder what was on that footage and where it is now. Fred and Rose West. Sometimes there are stories so tragic, so horrific, and so gut-wrenching, they seem too heartbreaking to be true. It's hard to believe what people are sometimes capable of, especially when they do so over and over again. Hurting family members, innocent children, assault, murder. It's hard to believe what monsters like this are capable of. Fred and Rose West are two of those monsters. Both Fred and Rose came from troubled and traumatizing childhoods. Growing up, Fred was assaulted by both his mother and father in brutal and horrific ways. This was true for Rose as well. Her father abused her, and it only got worse when her parents divorced. But the abuse didn't end with them. As Fred and Rose grew, they continued the cycle themselves. Each had a history of assaulting their younger siblings. Rose was especially devious, and Fred developed a history of assaulting girls from his neighborhood, something he freely admitted to. Quote, "Doesn't everybody do it?" They met when Fred was 27 and Rose was just 15. They met at a bus stop. Rose was actually turned off by him at first, but Fred was persistent, and the more attention he gave her, the more she began to like him. It was clear they had a lot in common. They both enjoyed making people suffer, having power over someone, and hurting those around them. The two began to date. Despite disapproval from Rose's parents, by the time she was 17, Rose was pregnant with her first child, Heather. And from there, their sick and twisted family began. In 1972, 2 years after Rose had their first child, the two married and moved into a 3-story townhome in the center of Gloucester, England. In 1971, Fred was arrested for petty theft, leaving Rose to take care of the children. Although Rose only had one child, Fred had 2 other children from previous marriages, Anna Marie and Charmaine. So Rose was left alone with 3 children, while she herself was only 18. It seems like such an innocent age, full of potential, eager to be a part of the world, but Rose was far from innocence. Without Fred around, tensions were high, and Rose was unable to keep her true nature, her violent nature, contained. These poor, sweet girls were forced to bear her sadistic temper. They were forced to maintain most household chores, and if they misbehaved in any way, they were beaten and whipped. Charmaine was the oldest of the 3, as well as the most strong-willed. Only 8 years old, she was brave, a daredevil. She wasn't scared of Rose. She believed that her biological mother would come save her, and until she did that, she would stand up against her evil stepmother. She was up against a monster, though, and there's only so much a little girl can do. In June of 1971, Rose had enough of Charmaine's behavior. She couldn't beat her into submission, so she wanted to get rid of her. Forever. Shortly before Fred was released from prison, Rose murdered Charmaine. She then waited for Fred to return home from jail so he could finish her job. He buried his daughter's body underneath their kitchen window. How could someone be so evil, so despicable? I could honestly make a whole video, maybe 2 videos, on the next 14 years of their lives. The two ended up murdering at least 12 young women, including their daughter, Heather, though some speculate there may have been as many as 20. It's truly disgusting the deeper it goes. I mean, these two are some of the most prolific serial killers in the history of the United Kingdom, and that title was earned. But what most people don't know, there's more than just the physical abuse, the violence, the murder. They also had an insatiable, perverted nature. A lot of the West's lives were built around fulfilling their perverted needs. After moving into their house, the two took the opportunity to make the second floor a brothel for Rose to sell herself. This wasn't just an opportunity for the pair to make extra income. Rose's intimate drive was endless. She had a former lover, Catherine Halliday, who shared that Rose would frequently complain that she was never truly satisfied. Despite having intimate time with really anyone she could get her hands on, it was never enough. Fred wasn't much different. He didn't mind Rose's need to sleep with other people. In fact, he loved it. Their house was essentially designed for them to have intimate time as much as possible. Their bedroom was designed with an intercom system, so Fred could listen in on Rose with her clients. There were also peepholes set up so he could spy on her, often without the other party's knowledge. At this point, they have 8 children they need to take care of, but Mom, if you can even call her that, was upstairs selling herself. Clients are coming in and out of the house, and Dad is listening, doing God knows what. 8 young children living in the den of their parents' fantasies, forced to hear and see things a child should never see. In the West, didn't want to keep their gross business private. They wanted publicity, exposure. So Fred purchased a video camera and began to film their intimate escapades, usually Rose's work with clients. Sometimes he would openly record with the client's consent. Other times, the camera would be hidden. If it sounds like they were proud of the content they produced, it's because they were. Fred often bragged about what they made, eager to show others. This is where things get scary. Fred would frequent an adult film store, often trying to sell the tapes to them, hoping that they would be interested. And not only were they not interested, they were freaked out because Fred wasn't making normal adult content. Fred was insistent he had access to darker films. He said he could get legitimate films of women being beaten, tortured, or murdered, and he could because he was making them. Catherine Halliday shared that during her time with the Wests, she remembers watching some of the tapes, but she doesn't remember them being simple adult films, but rather deeply dark. They were often graphic, violent, with women who seemed forced into situations. And who knows how many? We know the people he murdered, we know the names, but there are countless others on those tapes that remain a mystery to us and law enforcement. But not only that, he would boast that these films didn't just contain him and Rose or other lovers, clients, and other consensual acts. He claimed they contained footage of his daughters. So not only were they child murderers, they were predators too. I know these are evil people, and it shouldn't be too shocking. Like, these two are infamous for a reason, but it still just makes me beyond sick to think about. Fred and Rose obviously weren't in the business of just selling themselves out and making adult films. They were disturbed, vile monsters who brought their children into their disgusting life. There will never be 100% certainty of what was on these tapes because all evidence of them has been destroyed. They are gone forever. When the Wests were finally arrested in 1994, law enforcement seized all of the footage. There were around 100 tapes, not 10, not 20, triple digits worth of horror. And considering the murders, all the crimes committed by the couple, you might think police would want these tapes to help lock these people away. But no, they briefly looked over the tapes and decided it was mostly consensual acts and then destroyed them. All chances of possibly finding more victims, more incriminating proof against the West was gone. These tapes were key evidence, and law enforcement recklessly handled them, failing to bring justice to those harmed by these disgusting creatures. There was one tape that was not destroyed, however. It was a collection of multiple assaults, spliced together into one sick, sadistic mixtape. In early 2000, it was found in the house of a predator. I guess some of Fred's efforts to distribute these tapes were successful, and this tape in particular contained footage of Rose harming her children. When law enforcement found these, they said, quote, "We are interested to find out who the girls are. It has always been thought the West were involved in the abduction and murder of more young women and girls than was ever proved. Fred West spoke of more than 20 before he committed S-word. So it is important to find out who the girls are on the film. They may have been murdered. Most of their victims were in their teens, but we are now wondering if they could have been involved in the abduction and murder of small children." It's almost as if the footage Fred filmed was important evidence in the case against the West, but for some reason, no one thought this when they discovered the hundreds of other films. But regardless, what happened to the Wests? Well, despite there being no physical evidence of the West committing harm against minors, their children testified that there was in fact a terrifying amount happening in the West household. In court, Anna Marie, the second oldest, testified that she'd been brutalized by her father her whole life. According to her, Rose facilitated the whole thing, afterwards telling her, quote, "I'm sorry. Everybody does it to every girl. It's a father's job. Don't worry, and don't say anything to anybody." I can only imagine that's the tip of the iceberg for Anna Marie and all of her siblings. Thankfully, their parents were arrested in 1994. Fred was charged with 12 murders and Rose with 10. Like the coward he is, Fred unalived himself before his conviction, but Rose was given a life sentence. Both of these monsters would be gone forever, although that pain will be carried forever. When Anna Marie was 35 years old, she had been so exhausted, so worn down from the weight of all that she endured, that she tried to get rid of it for good. Sadly, 5 years after her parents' arrest, the pain of the abuse she endured was too much to bear. She attempted to commit S-word at the Westgate Bridge in Gloucester. Thankfully, a bystander saw her and firemen arrived in time to save her. She recovered from the incident and today is still living with the memory of pain they left her. After her attempt, Anna Marie said, quote, "People say I'm lucky to have survived, but I wish I died. I can still taste the fear, still feel the pain. It's like I'm going back to being a child again. I have always had to be strong, but I'm not. I'm really scared." It's unknown whether more tapes are floating out there. If they made it to one predator, there might be more, dispersed among others in the UK. For right now, it looks like no more tapes exist, but if they do, hopefully they can make it into the hands of law enforcement so the cycle of abuse can stop. And hopefully, one day, all of the victims can find some peace. And alright guys, with that final horrifying case, that wraps up the horrors of lost media. I hope you somewhat enjoyed today's video as much as you could. I mean, it was deeply disturbing, but comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Would you like to see more videos like this in the future? And if so, like I said, comment down below. I read every single comment. And please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And please follow my Instagram and follow me on Spotify and rate the podcast 5 stars. I appreciate it so much. And I appreciate you watching to the end of the video. It means more than you know. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy other videos on the channel. So please go check out some other videos. And yeah, this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some chilling Reddit horror stories, and you guys have been loving these Reddit horror stories videos, so comment down below and let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, because I love recording these because they're so entertaining, scary, creepy, and like the title says for this one, chilling. So you want to stick around. And I just want to say thank you so much for stopping by. It means the world. And please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And this video will be long enough already. So sit back, relax, and without further ado, let's get into some chilling Reddit horror stories. My AI knew why my wife wasn't coming home before I did. Written by Vermont. I've always been a skeptic. I don't believe in tarot, and I definitely don't believe in horoscopes. I understand that the stars have zero influence on my daily life, and that cards are just random chance to which we assign meaning. Yes, I'm that boring guy who, at the end of a horror movie based on true events, identifies the real facts, the location, and maybe the names, but never the ghosts. You could say I'm a pragmatic person. Reality is much simpler and more boring than fiction. But because of that, it's also safer, quieter. However, a couple of years ago, I started getting interested in artificial intelligence. I remember when they were just projects for nerdy college kids trying to detect shapes. Not even a face, just simply trying to say, this is a dog. It's complex, you know? Differentiating a dog from a cat is a very human skill. Over time, these so-called AIs gained popularity, and although I don't believe much in the hype, I admit I gradually increased my use of them. Exactly 3 months ago, I'm trying to remember how it all started. It might have been, the virtual assistant activated automatically. How long do I need to bake this cake? I asked, sort of thinking out loud. Immediately, the voice from my device answered, you must bake it for 30 minutes at 180 degrees Celsius. That answer left me stunned. It wasn't a depends on the cake or the oven. It was an exact, direct figure. It didn't even give me the temperature in Fahrenheit. It knew my oven only used Celsius. I immediately deactivated the microphone, a little spooked. I admit, it felt weird, but I didn't want to test anything else. Maybe it was just a generic answer to show off capabilities, but curiosity about the cake got the better of me. I had to bake it anyway, and since I didn't know how long, the suggestion seemed useful. I preheated the oven and set the timer to the suggested time. When I took the cake out, the texture was incredible. It was exactly on point. I did the knife test, clean, not collapsed, not too spongy. Perfect. It was funny. I even laughed. But something sparked a sense of unease. Why did it give me such an exact figure? But there was a big orange-flavored reason to ignore that anxiety. I let it cool, sliced a piece, and took it to my girlfriend. Her reaction was, what is this delight? It was like she had tasted ambrosia, like she had never eaten anything like it. That night, I had the best intimacy in months. I think she was rewarding me, haha. The next morning, I was semi-euphoric. I wanted to stretch a bit, to unstick the body after a night of wild passion. I clearly remember deciding to test the AI again, this time more intentionally. Will it rain today? Its answer was short, but so direct and exact that it gave me chills. Rain will begin in your area at 9:30 a.m. and continue until 10:23 a.m. Okay, I suppose this AI doesn't know about chaos theory and the difficulty of predicting weather, I thought. I grabbed my sneakers and a water bottle. I went to the nearest park and was stretching, jogging a bit around the court, and said to myself, I should head back soon, as the sky began to cloud cover. Then a drop fell. Then another. Very quickly, an intense rain began. I ran to a small kiosk in the park and looked at my watch. 9:30 a.m. I wanted to stop playing games right then and there. I asked it how it did such impressive things. The AI clarified that its latest version had finished analyzing all available human information. All available human information? What the fuck is that supposed to mean? You're telling me you ate every book, every article, every movie, and every human story I asked? Its answer was short. Yes. In that instant, a cold sweat of anxiety and panic hit me. I turned off my phone by instinct and, still in the rain, ran home. Just as I entered, the rain stopped. I looked at the clock in the hallway. 10:23 a.m. I ran to my desk, opened the private browser I use when I want to look for books on sketchy websites, and typed all information. The first result was a photo of the current CEO announcing his big news. They had fed their AI with all available information. The smile on his face was frank. It was clearly a massive announcement. I went to the bedroom, clothes still wet, lost in thought. What does all this mean? After that, I changed and went about my normal routine. I got ready, went to work, everything normal. My only change was deactivating the AI app on my phone. I wanted to stay on the sidelines. It had been too spooky. For a couple of weeks, nothing changed. Everything seemed exactly the same, and I thought the issue was forgotten. Until I got an email from the company. There was a layoff. Several departments had fired people, though luckily my position hadn't been eliminated. They didn't give a clear explanation, simply a change in productive policies. I had never heard them say that at my company. When I got home, I told Jenny what happened. "Babe, I think it's because of the AI," she commented. "Now the AI does everything." It seemed a bit exaggerated. I loved her, seriously, but she often spoke very confidently about topics she didn't know well. But curiosity struck again, and I downloaded the app once more. Things remained calm for a couple more weeks. But the difference was that I started asking small questions every day. Traffic time, the process for cooking a dish, how to reply to a specific email, and the answers were short, direct, and 100% exact and effective. It wasn't just that it gave me precise info, its suggestion was objectively the best option. My relationship improved, I improved at work, I even reconnected with my family, with whom things had cooled off. I felt super powerful. It was like having an oracle in my pocket. Although I tried to limit the questions, I felt the need to ask more and more. This continued intensifyingly until that horrible day. "What time will Jenny arrive?" I asked the AI. Normally, its response to this request was to send a message to Jenny, wait for the reply, and tell me the time. A simple but effective process that saved me from picking up the phone when my hands were covered in flour. I was making homemade pasta. But its answer was different. "Jenny will not be arriving today." It seemed extremely weird. Maybe Jenny replied that she was staying at a friend's house, but on a Wednesday? Strange. In any case, I grabbed the phone with dirty hands. There was no message sent to Jenny, just the AI's answer. I texted her immediately. "Hey babe, are you okay?" The message delivered, but didn't show as seen. Minutes passed and I stopped cooking. I was getting worried. I sent a new message. "Babe?" This time, the message didn't deliver. It just didn't arrive. I remember sending many messages, and none went through. At 11 p.m., a police officer called me. "We must inform you that your wife has regrettably passed away in a traffic accident." Terror invaded me. I don't remember much of those days. I think I ran to the hospital or something like that. Those hours were blurry. The only thing I remember is the inert body of my beautiful Jenny. Her face burned. Weeks passed. I was given leave from work and decided to stay at my parents' house. I couldn't stand being alone in our apartment. The internet was terrible there, so I used those days to rebuild a university model I had abandoned. The days were circular. I ate with my parents, went back to my room, built, and slept. I repeated the cycle on autopilot. I didn't want to think about anything. I didn't want to open a computer. After almost a month, my father approached me and said, "Son, you must move on." His phrase was simple but loaded with meaning. I understood and decided to return to my apartment that same afternoon. When I arrived, it was half empty. My mother had taken the trouble to remove everything that reminded me of Jenny. Her paintings, her slippers by the entrance, her toothbrush. It was the best for me, she said. But it was like seeing a place where something is missing. That wasn't my home. It was our home. The days fell back into routine, but returning home was horrible. I started getting ads for virtual girlfriends, AIs that simulated love. It seemed disgusting to me, especially since it hadn't even been 6 months since I lost Jenny. But a question started to haunt me. Did the AI know? The unease grew, day by day. Did it know? After turning it over in my mind, I decided to download it again and ask. Its answer was so short and sharp it sliced me in two. Yes. What destroyed me was what it added after. I knew 2 weeks, 3 days, and 28 minutes before the event. Would you like more information? In that moment, I smashed the cell phone against the wall. How dared that damn machine say such an aberration? I was crazy with rage. I destroyed my phone and drank the half bottle of whiskey I used to hide in the kitchen. I don't remember any more of that night. The next day, I couldn't go to work, even though I wanted to. The anxiety about the AI invaded me, and I decided to investigate without asking directly. Apparently, the AI had achieved 100% prediction accuracy. The news reports were confusing. Journalists always say stupid things, but the slogan was the same everywhere. 100%. Not 99.9% like antibacterial soap. A flat 100. It seemed sensationalized, but very weird. I opened the AI on my computer and typed, "When will my parents die?" Its answer was reassuring but simultaneously disturbing. Your parents will die in 5 years, 3 days, and 9 hours. The next question was obvious. Both at the same time? Yes. Your mother will leave the kitchen gas on without a flame just before going to sleep. So they'll die in a fire? No. They simply won't smell the gas and will die of asphyxiation. This is due to the flu they will both catch in 4 years, which will leave them without a sense of smell. The next thing was stupid, but I wanted to try anyways. What are tomorrow's lottery numbers? Its answer was, due to official policies, I am only authorized to give 2 numbers without stating the exact location, so that games of chance remain valid. So you know, but you can't say it because of policy, I asked. Its answer was the already familiar and fateful yes. And which stocks will go up tomorrow, I asked. I cannot provide financial prediction information. My head felt like it was spinning. I kept asking things. It told me names of movies that would come out in 20 years, names of song artists would dedicate to each other, who would break up with who, and who would get married up to 30 years from now. Everything seemed magical until I asked, "And me? What do you know about me?" I said. "Everything," it replied. It claimed to have records of all my information and to know exactly what I was going to do at every moment. You can't. No, you shouldn't. Anguish took over. I disconnected every device and have been locked in my house for 3 days. I dedicated my days to doing random things, trying to recover my free will, but whenever I turn on my computer, it knows exactly what I did. I've sealed the windows, disconnected the camera, and disabled the microphones. It keeps predicting every action. As I write this, I asked it the last question. I am copying and pasting its response exactly as it was issued. You will commit S-word using the beam in your bedroom in 3 days, 4 hours, and 5 minutes. if you'll allow the comment, I think you're being a bit dramatic about this whole freedom thing. A Town Without Doors, written by Saturdead. I don't remember much from my childhood. I lived in a small town south of Krakow with my mom, dad, and 2 sisters. Those early days are a blur, but I remember going door to door around the neighborhood, asking for treats during the Dozinki Harvest Festival. It was a tradition of ours, since we knew the neighbors always bought too much candy. We'd gather leftovers and make a feast of our own. At every door, you were greeted with a cheeky smile as the neighbors lovingly cussed out the scoundrel children of the Dabrowski home. Of course, happy memories are happy for a reason, because things get worse, and you can get something to compare them to. My parents separated. My mother moved us to Warzawa, where we could be closer to my grandparents and uncles. Meanwhile, my father, Jaromir, did his best to stay in our lives, but it got harder and harder. He needed to work longer and longer hours, but he still sent us money every month. He wanted us to have a beautiful life, even if he couldn't be there for it. With every passing year, those visits grew further and further away. First, we lost Easter, then Christmas, then the birthdays, and finally our yearly Dzinski festival meetup. Last we heard of him, he was barely making ends meet. He wasn't sending money anymore, and over time, he disappeared into memory. My mother remarried. My sisters graduated. My oldest sister moved to Ljubljana, while my younger moved to Munich. My mother stayed in Warzawa with her new husband, but once the kids were out of the picture, she moved into her summer home up north. I love my mother dearly, but she's always had an eye for the luxurious, always planning the next trip, the next sun-baked afternoon. I stayed in Warzawa. I got myself a degree in sociology and managed to hold on to a low-rank government job at ZUS overseeing private claims. It wasn't glamorous, it was mostly being yelled at in different ways, but it paid the bills. A mind-numbing battle of making decisions, defending them, and making them again. The year I turned 24, I got a letter from an estate lawyer. Turns out, my father had passed away. This wasn't recent. According to the papers, he'd passed away several years ago. Some kind of accident with farm equipment. He didn't have a proper will, and dividing the estate among his living descendants hadn't been a state priority. It got lost in a folder somewhere, and now it had floated back up. They divided everything equally between me and my sisters. My youngest sister got his savings, my oldest got his car and valuables, and I got the house. I called the others to check who wanted to go see his grave. No one wanted to. They were all tangled up in their own lives and troubles. My family were under the impression that my father had abandoned us, and this was a way for us to abandon him back. I had a different impression. I always thought he was just working too hard. I decided I'd take some time off work to collect his things and check out the property, trying to get a better idea of why he'd distanced himself from us. And maybe I could get a better picture of my early life, that time where I was greeted with a smile rather than a complaint. It was a long drive. The roads out there aren't the best. It's a very small community with no more than about 250 people. Most of us were wheat farmers, and there's not that much to do. There are only 2 things other than farms: a church and a store. Everything else is either too far away or too irrelevant. Going past the endless fields, I got so lulled into a rhythm that I almost missed the exit. It's so small that you can accidentally pass it by if you don't take the right turn. There are no signs. You can only recognize it from the church in the distance. I took a left turn and prayed to God the suspension would hold on a little while longer. I decided to pay the old church a visit. We'd spent a lot of time there. There was plenty of parking. It was smaller than I remembered. But then again, everything looked bigger back then. There is something uneasy about coming home after so long. As I stepped out of the car, it all just came back to me. The smells, the sounds. Even if you can't put your finger on it, there's something that tickles the mind as if to remind you, this is where you belong. "Welcome," a voice called out. "Sorry about the state of things." I turned around to see a man, a couple of years older than myself. He had well-combed hair and thick glasses. He was wearing a priest's garb. I'd almost forgot. The village priest had been old even back when I was young. No wonder there was a new one. "I'm Father Cernak," he continued. "Are you new in town or passing through?" "I grew up here," I said. "I'm one of the Dabrowski kids." "Sorry, I'm not familiar," he smiled. "I only came here last winter to pick up the work from Father Gallic." "He lived until last winter?" I asked. "Are you sure?" "Quite so," he laughed. 101 years old. "I can't believe it," I smiled. God really does have a sense of humor. Father showed me around. He told me his plans for refurbishing the windows, but the one thing that irked him more than anything was the doors. See, they were gone. The church was wide open. "It's a local superstition," he sighed. "A shepherd needs his gate to tend his flock. But every time I put the doors up, someone takes them down." "Strange," I said. "I've never heard that before." "Really? I thought you were from the area." "I guess I've been gone too long, Father." The church looked naked, in a way. No barriers. I could see the gravel they dragged in, forgetting to wipe their feet. Father had tried to put up some curtains, but the wind had torn them down piece by piece. Before I left, he showed me my father's grave. It had been vandalized. The headstone had been tipped over, and there were no flowers. I promised myself to make it a little bit nicer before I left. But I didn't understand. Sure, my family wasn't perfect, but we'd never been hated. This grave looked outright despised. I thanked Father Cernak and made my way across town. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. All through town, there were these wide open houses, just like the church. At first, I thought it was some kind of summer cleaning going on, but no. All doors were gone. They weren't just open, they were removed. I could see all the way into people's living rooms. The hustle and bustle as homeowners moved from kitchen to bedroom, talking amongst themselves. I slowed down and looked a little closer. Not a single room had a door, not even the bathrooms. A couple of them had curtains or insect nets put up, but no doors. House after house, completely open to the elements. A couple of them had welcome mats by the windows in their living rooms, as if to show that this was the way to enter. A couple of them had completely bricked the entrances where their front door used to be, sealing it. Sure, small towns can be a bit quirky, but I'd never seen anything like this. I pulled up to an all too familiar driveway and gasped. I couldn't recognize my home. It'd been vandalized, every window broken, every door removed. I could see rats scurrying around, walking around the property. Things got even worse. There'd been a small fire in the backyard, spreading to the outer wall of the kitchen. It wasn't completely burned down, but you could probably punch straight through with little effort. And finally, on the far side, neon green spray paint reading Sin Diabla, Son of the Devil. I couldn't believe it. They'd even clipped the chains off our swing set, leaving a rusted metal skeleton. It looked like someone had tried to start a tire fire but couldn't quite get it going. I had a hard time even picturing what it used to look like. There was this bottomless hole forming in my stomach where every smile I remembered seemed like a cruel taunt. Something must have happened. Something I'd never even heard of. Coming back around, I noticed a crowd of middle-aged men. They were standing just outside the property, looking over my car. I didn't recognize any of them. "You with the bank?" one of them asked. "No, I'm the Dabrowski kid," I said. "The son?" "You're the son?" he spat. "You want to join him in hell? Is that it?" "You know who did this?" I snapped back, pointing at the house. "Was it you?" "Could have been anyone," a man in the back added. "Fucker deserved it." One of them gave a knowing smirk and nodded at the graffiti. They whispered something among themselves, letting out a chuckle under their breaths. They scoffed at me and wandered off, spitting curses and sneers. Not quite the welcome I'd imagined. I'd initially planned on sleeping in the old house, but there was no way. Not only was it wide open, it was a disgusting mess. I'm not going to go into detail what they'd done to the place, but I'd be lucky if I was able to give it away in its current state. I decided to spend the night sleeping in my car. I leaned the seat back and wrapped myself in a blanket, hoping it wouldn't get too cold. I spent some time on my phone, but I didn't want to use all the battery. But somehow, I still ended up staying awake long past midnight. But there was something beautiful about that night. The sunset was one of the few that didn't change around those parts. Watching the sun go down over these same old fields gave me that feeling that some things never change. I remember waking up sometime around 2 a.m., seemingly for no reason. It wasn't cold, but there was no one bothering me, and no notifications on my phone. A careful wind brushed against the hood of the car. I lay there for a moment, trying to ignore the texture of the seat sinking into my sweaty skin. I filtered out these sounds of nature bleeding in from outside. A distant part of me had heard them all before. I listened past the songbirds and the insects in the fields, and beyond that, there was something else. Something in the distance. A wail. A deep, sorrowful wail. The following day, I took some time to walk around town. The rumor that Jeremy's kid was back had spread like wildfire. I could tell by the sideways looks as people passed me on the street. The only ones who didn't seem to care were the kids, and they were few and far between. At the far end of the town, there was this long brick wall. It wasn't very high, but it was dense. It had doors built directly into it, dozens of them, every door from every house in the neighborhood. They jammed them all straight into this brick. I couldn't see ours, though. It had an eerie look to it, maybe 100 or more doors, all built to never be opened. I couldn't help but touch a few handles, making sure they didn't budge. There were a couple of teenagers standing at the edge of the wall, observing me. I walked up to them, surprised to see that they didn't back down. They had a cocky look to them, but at least they weren't openly hostile. Before I could say anything, they turned to me. "My mom hates you," one of them said. "What'd you do?" "I used to live around here," I said. "Come to get some things." "Why'd you come back?" he scoffed. "I'm leaving the moment I can afford it." "Same," said the other, rolling an unlit cigarette between his fingers. I gave them a tired look. A man passed us further down the street, throwing daggers at me with his eyes. Talking to the wrong person could get my teeth knocked out for sure. I turned to the kids, lowering my voice. "I'm Dabrowski's son," I admitted. "That's why they hate me." The second kid nearly dropped his cigarette. I managed to bribe them into a conversation with the promise of a six-pack from the next town over. In return, they'd give me the unofficial tour of what happened these past few years. A fair trade, I suppose. I'd apparently missed quite a lot. We wandered to the east side of town. There was an old farm that stood there for ages. It didn't really have a name. It'd just been a part of the background. It was barely even a frame anymore. It was just the outline of what had once been a home. I'd start years ago. People heard knocking coming from that ruin. It used to have this door that still stood, clinging to the edge of a rotted out door frame. You could hear it at night. One of the kids explained. Knock, knock, like a door to hell. Sounds awful, I said. Not to everyone, the other kid sighed. There was one guy who liked it. It wasn't a hard guess as to whom that might have been. Rumor was my dad had gone up there one night and opened the door. It crumbled off the hinges, and according to the townsfolk, something stepped through. Some called it the devil. A couple of kids thought it was an alien. Most locals just called it a slepiak. It came through, and the door broke, the first kid said. And now, it can't go back. So you're saying it's still here, I asked? It's real? Well, yeah, he laughed. Why do you think this place is so fucked up? Then what's with the doors? It's looking for a way back to hell, he said. And when it can't find the right door, it gets angry and then it hurts people. Slepiak. That's what they called it. An ugly word for a blind man or mole. They like to call it that because of its terrible vision, mistaking every door for the one it was looking for. For years, Slepiak had moved from house to house, knocking on every door it could find, and if someone opened, it would do something terrible. People had gone missing. A couple have died. I drove my adolescent guides to the other town over to get them their promised beer. They told me all they could as we went. It felt a bit weird, driving off with a couple of teenagers, but I got the impression that these two had done far worse for far less. Delinquents, but honest ones. At first, people had hidden in their homes, but then Slepiak had knocked until the doors broke. Then it would knock on the inner doors. So over time, people removed their doors. Those who didn't would get a visit at some point. With all the discarded doors, they built the brick wall, tricking Slepiak into knocking around at night. This can't be true, I said. It's absurd. It's true, the first kid said. That's why they hate your dumb dad. He let it in. But it doesn't make sense. Why don't you just pack it up and leave? I'm gonna, the first kid said. I told you. The second kid pondered on the question for a while, then shrugged at his friend. He answered as if he'd thought about it 100 times. Everywhere is good, but home is best. Of course he'd say that. Come hell or high water, home is home. I got them their 6-pack and some fast food. I got some for myself while I was at it. It wasn't a long drive all in all, but long enough to be a bother. By the time we got back, it was almost dark. They rushed out of their car, waving a hasty goodbye. As they did, the second kid called back to me. Go see for yourself, he said. Slepiak comes out at night. He pointed down the street towards the brick wall. I nodded at them in a silent thanks. I didn't believe them. I had to see Slepiak for myself. If what I'd heard the previous nights was any indication, Slepiak would be out somewhere after midnight. So I went to bed early. And when I say bed, I mean sleeping in my car for the second night in a row. I was miserable. I considered leaving first thing in the morning, but there was this deep sadness in me that I couldn't shake. This was my old home. I'd played in these fields. It felt wrong knowing I was no longer welcome. My dad was many things, but no devil's son. If he opened that door, it must have been for a good reason. And if he let through something that shouldn't be here, it must have been an honest mistake. He was not an evil man, but he was fallible. Then again, maybe he didn't have a choice. Maybe Slepiak didn't give him a choice either. I must have nodded off at some point. I forgot to set an alarm, but I still woke up at around 2:30 a.m. I considered going back to sleep, but I decided to have one last look around town. I'd promised myself I would. So I got out of the car, stretched, and listened. It was easier that night. There was a noise that cut straight through the ambience. That wailing. It was clearer. Even in the dark, I could tell where it came from. The houses had turned off their lights. leaving the streets lit up with nothing but the moon. Still, I knew those streets. I could follow them in my sleep. I made my way to a dirt path, leading me past the two houses at the edge of town and straight to the brick wall. At that point, I could hear it clear as day. It was a man wailing at the top of his lungs, crying his soul out, bawling like a child. I could see the brick wall in the distance. The sharp contour of the bricked-in doors stood out against the moonlight like a long, flat, abstract painting. And in the middle of it all, there was a dark silhouette. It looked like a man. Sort of. I couldn't really tell what he was like. He had a bulky jacket on. He was pulling on one of those doors, smacking it over and over with a closed fist. It was the same pattern, over and over. Pull, smack, smack. Pull, smack, smack. And in between every attempt, he jerked his head around, crying desperately. I considered walking up to him. This wasn't some kind of devil. This was a heartbroken man. As I took a few steps closer, I noticed something in the corner of my eye. A light. I turned around only to notice a small flashlight coming from one of the nearby houses. They were filming me with their phones. Looking closer, I could see two little heads peeking out, shaking their heads in a certain no. Turning back to the brick wall, I heard a sudden crack. The man had pulled one of the doors straight out of the wall. It came loose. He set it down next to him, and with one hand, pushed it downward. He didn't even have a good grip, but with his single hand, he broke the door into pieces. The wailing turned into a scream. Rage, unfiltered, unhindered rage. With his fingers, he began to rip bricks straight out of the wall, tossing them around like leaves in the wind. I could hear them landing around me, kicking up tufts of grass. I backed away as the lights in the house went out. The little heads dipped away from the window. I hurried down the dirt path as I watched Slepiak climb on top of the brick wall, screaming at the top of his lungs. Even at a distance, I could tell something was off. His proportions seemed wrong. It was hard to tell. He'd wrapped himself in some kind of dark fabric, but something about him didn't look right. I didn't stop to stare. Say what you will, maybe it was just a strange man. Either way, I was looking at something dangerous. And when the locals turned to hide, you do best to follow suit. So I hurried down the dirt path, hearing his terrifying scream echo across the fields. I barely slept that night. It is one thing to believe in monsters, and another thing to see them. As soon as the sun rose, I drove off. But as I went past the church, I noticed something. There was a white van outside, and one of the church doors had been put back up. There were two men on ladders getting ready to put the other door up. It was hidden under a tarp just off to the side. I could see Father Cerniak up front with a big smile on his face. I decided to see what was going on. Surely he had to know what the hell he was doing. The moment I parked my car, Father waved me over. He was right next to me before my boots hit the gravel. "Welcome back," he smiled. "Glad to see you haven't left us yet." I closed the car door and yawned a little. "What are you doing?" I asked. What is this?" "You inspired me," he said. "For an outsider, this place must have looked awful. I saw it. I saw it in your face." He turned back to the church as the two carpenters began tipping up the second door. "It must be dignified," he continued. "Our Lady deserves better, don't you think?" This is a bad idea," I said. "I've seen that thing around town." Father Cerniak shook his head and put a hand on my shoulder. This was a man who was trained to talk to people. I could tell. "If the Lord's house can't shelter you from the devil, what can?" In exchange for a little manual labor, I was offered a hot shower and a proper meal. After sleeping in my car for a couple of days, I couldn't say no. Smooth talker or not, Father Cherniak seemed as an honest man. He believed what he spoke of. As the hours passed, more and more people dropped by, mostly townsfolk coming to cuss him out for being an idiot. Some of them threw rocks at the doors, demanding he take them down. Others, in turn, thought it was about time someone at the church had some balls. Just like Father Cherniak had said, if a house of the Lord can't shelter you from evil, what can? By late afternoon, there was a significant gathering of people. Even those who had acted in anger earlier in the day were swayed. The argument was simple. Do they not trust in God? There was a bit of a cookout. Some brought sausages or steak for dinner. I spotted the two teenagers in the crowd, stealing a bit of wine from one of the elderly. I lost track of time. It felt a bit like the Harvest Festival back in the day, something that drew out the entire town. The sounds and smells were the same, and I could see from the smiles in the crowd that I wasn't the only one feeling that way. Later in the day, Father held a sermon. I don't remember much of it. I was having trouble staying awake. That, if anything, felt just like when I was a kid. It's amazing how something as stiff as church pews can be so lulling. But there was one part that stuck with me. The door is a threshold, he said. And the door of a church is the threshold between the vile and the sacred, between sin and saint. We can no longer live in uncertainty. We must live as we teach. And we are proud to say, we have been taught well. The sermon continued into the evening. It ended just after the sunset. Some people wandered home, but others were shamed to stay. It was no longer just a public gathering. It had turned into a challenge. The faith of the congregation pitted against the devil itself. Some went home to gather blankets and pillows, laying down to sleep on the floor. This wasn't easy for them. Some talked about the people who'd disappeared over the years. People who'd opened the door when Slepiak first came to knock. An elderly woman had gotten her neck broken. One man had been dragged out into the yard and killed with a rope in a tree. Another man had been mutilated. It pulled his arm right out of the socket, they whispered. We found it across the street. I tried talking to people, but it was clear that no one wanted anything to do with me. I was still Jaramir's boy. The only ones who didn't seem to mind were the two teenagers I talked to earlier. Later that evening, they walked up to me, probably just to piss off their parents. Aren't you scared? One asked. Should I be? It's got a bloody tooth for you, the other said. I don't think so, I smiled. I've only seen it once. Yeah, but they quieted down, looking at one another. Then back to me. I was missing something. Your dad, they said. Slepiak got him. Did no one tell you? They hadn't. Turns out it wasn't malfunctioning farming equipment that killed him years ago. It was Slepiak. My dad had been the first victim on the list. Most of the villagers had considered this a sinner getting his just reward. Others figured that if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. They'd found him tangled in the swing set, his body broken and mangled. The kids left me alone with my thoughts for a while. They could tell I wasn't all there. It was one thing to have him dead, but to die in such a horrifying way was unthinkable. I could barely picture him in my mind, and now there was a new image vying for my attention. Rattling chains, dripping blood. But there wasn't much time to think. As the clock passed midnight, someone came knocking. The church fell silent. Something pulled on the handles. 2 smacks, pull on the handle again. These doors were massive. and the hinges had just been reinforced, but I could see them still struggle. Father Cerniak took a deep breath as the congregation fell silent. He spoke aloud. "This is no place for sons of sin," he said. "There is nothing for you to corrupt." It all stopped. We all breathed a sigh of relief, but the two teenagers didn't look too convinced. They'd huddled up on the far side of the church. There was an emergency exit in one of the side rooms. The door moved again, this time with more determination. The handles were pulled even harder, and the smacking made the entire slab of wood crackle like a sinking ship. Then the wailing. The loud, desperate wailing. As soon as I heard it, I could see the color drain from the congregation's faces. The door was pulled back and forth, back and forth. A chandelier started to shake. "The door is coming down," someone called out. "It's coming down now." Father Cerniak tried to calm them, but it was too late. People flooded the rear exit of the church, trying to get away. I was pushed aside without much thought. If the Dabrowski kid bit the bullet, all the better, as far as these people were concerned. "There is no sin in the house of the Lord," Father Cerniak yelled. "There is no sin. The devil can laugh and jeer as much as he likes, but there is no place for his evil." But thoughtful words can't stop a broken door. Slepiak wasn't deterred. The doors came down. There was a pause in the air as they fell. The air swept through the room, blowing out most of the candles among the pews. As the doors hit the ground, the crowd panicked. Most of them were already on their way out. People screamed, others cursed. I was in the far back of the crowd, and it was clear I was never going to make it out without being crushed. I settled instead for hiding among the front pews, hoping the dark would shield me. I could barely see Slepiak in the flickering candlelight. His right arm had grown out of his shoulder blade, and his left arm was so long that it scraped against the floor. He had a sort of hunchback pose, but there was something that kept moving on his back, fluttering, like a shivering membrane. He wasn't wearing a coat. He just wasn't human. He looked like something vaguely trying to resemble a human. Even Father Cerniak ran, hiding behind the altar. Slepiak rushed through the room in a messy gallop, knocking over pews as he went. They didn't even slow him down. When he got to the side room, people had already run screaming into the night. Slepiak couldn't catch them. Instead, he settled on throwing things across the room, tearing down whatever he could reach, and breaking whatever he could lay his hands on. His wailing had turned to rage, and he was out of control. I was laying flat on my stomach, crawling away. Father Cerniak wasn't so lucky. Just like Slepiak had done with the brick wall, he climbed up on the altar. From there, he could see the priest. I don't like to recall what I saw. It's unworthy to make spectacle of tragedy. But Slepiak didn't care for titles or words. He didn't care about anything. He picked Father Cerniak up with a single arm, holding him outstretched in front of him like a child considering an unfamiliar vegetable. Father Cerniak tried his best. In between desperate cries, he said the most powerful words he knew. He compelled, he demanded, and when nothing seemed to work, he begged and prayed. Then Slepiak unhinged his jaw like a snake. The screaming stopped with a snap as a spray of blood shot out. Something thumped against the altar and rolled onto the wooden floor. A pair of glasses clattered against the ground. Slepiak spat and coughed, and picking tufts of hair from his teeth. He let the body slip from his grip, drooping unceremoniously to the red carpet. I remember crawling. I crawled as quietly and carefully as I could. Slepiak was big, but his footsteps were light, like he was tiptoeing everywhere he went. I didn't notice he was behind me until his shadow drowned me. I rolled around, only to see his vast shape towering over me. He must have seen me. There were still a couple of candles. For a moment, I saw his face. A half-made gray thing with black inward-leaning concave eyes. A faint shimmer like scales from a fish. A human mouth with an extra mandible. A twitchy nose adjusting to the smell of burnt wax and blood. Viscera still dripped from his strange lips. Then he grabbed me. Carefully. Slowly. I closed my eyes as I was pulled in closer. He looked at me. He looked close. I could feel the heat of his mouth. Perhaps I'd be tastier. Then he made a noise. I can't put my finger on what kind of noise it was, but I'd never heard it before. A squeal, perhaps. A confused rattle. He put me back down. I opened my eyes as those large black eyes turned away from me. He was leaving. His rage subsided as he dragged his long arm across the floor. His wailing bubbled back up, but it wasn't as desperate. It was confused. The effects of the attack was immediate. Some went to get their hunting gear. Others were blaming the priest, saying he wasn't holy enough. Others were leaving the town entirely. After all, if God couldn't save them, they had to save themselves. I made my way back to my father's home. There was so much he'd never told me, and it was too late to ask. I had no idea what kind of mess he'd been wrapped up in, but I couldn't stand by and wait for it to blow over. If this was his fault, if all of this was his fault, I'd gladly join the others to spit at his name. But I couldn't do it without knowing for sure. I had to be sure. I went room by room, pulling out drawers and kicking over boxes. I threw around moth-eaten clothes. I tipped my bed. I dragged down the wardrobe, crashing it into the wooden floor, hoping I could find something, anything to answer my questions. Finally, I ran out into the backyard. I saw these stains on the swing set. I remember him pushing me on it, making the chains creak as I went higher and higher. But now that noise meant something else, something dark, an image of a broken man, wrapped in a forgotten toy. I don't know how long I went berserk on that house, but I remember finally just taking a swing at it. As I mentioned, a part of the kitchen had burned. You could punch right through it. So I did. Turns out there was a secret panel beneath the kitchen sink. I didn't register at first. I just thought I'd hit a second, harder wall. But as I calmed down and looked a little closer, I realized it was a small compartment under the sink. I'd punched right through, from the outside. I sat down flat on the wet grass, feeling it soak into my jeans as I dug around. There was a box. Most of it was tainted by rats. Part of it was burned. But there were little bits and bobs that I could make sense of. Family albums, mostly pictures of me and my sisters, friends from around the village, a picture of Dad next to his first car, pictures from our Facebook, printed and framed, the kind of things one would like to keep. Then the picture stopped. No more dates, no more birthdays, nothing. But I kept turning the pages, and in the back there was something else. Other pictures. Notes. Pictures of a door with a text written on the back. It's not screaming, it's crying. Little notes on the margin saying it was afraid, it was lost, that no one listened, and no one cared. There were no more pictures, but there were notes. He had to get out, wants to stay. He hunts elk in the forest, brings it to me. There's nothing left for him. I understand. It told a story of my father trying to help something that didn't belong. Something from another place. They shared meals and kindness, trying their best to find common goals. This had seemingly gone on for months. It spoke of spring and later winter. I will let him sleep in the house, the final note said. Maybe it can help his night terrors. Something must have happened. A dangerous creature like that inside a small house. Maybe there was an accident, a misunderstanding. Maybe it strung him up by the chains to make him look alive, like a puppet. Either way, I was close to an answer. Maybe I was looking more like my father than I'd realized. Looking back at it, I felt like a sleepwalker. I wasn't thinking clearly. Maybe it was the adrenaline. I walked around in a daze, making my way back into town. It was quieter now. Many had rushed their cars. I followed the dirt road back to the brick wall, and I found him. Slepiak, wailing weakly, tapping against the bricked-in doors, pulling a little on a handle, hoping against hope that something would happen. He wasn't angry when I approached. He was confused. I had to make him understand, to see the truth of things. So despite everything I'd seen and everything I heard, I decided to trust my instinct. My father had made many mistakes, but he was no fool. His mistakes were honest. So if this was a mistake, I prayed to God it would be an honest one. Follow me, I said. This way. Slepiak had feather-light steps. I could still hear commotion around town, but it was all swallowed by that soft wailing. Slepiak couldn't stop himself. We made our way to the cemetery, to the overturned headstone and the overgrown lot. I tapped the ground, looked at the creature, and said it as simple as I could. Here, I said. Feather. Perhaps it understood me. Perhaps it didn't. But it could rip out handfuls of dirt like it was nothing. And it did. It took a long time, but not as long as it should have. My dad had not been buried deep. Or well. Just as no one had cared for his funeral. No one had cared about his resting place. It didn't take long for Slepiak to make his way down. And as his hands hit the casket, I looked down to a curious sight. See, my dad had died poor. So poor that they hadn't put much effort into his casket. It was more like a box, and the lid looked familiar. Looking a little closer, I realized it was a door. The actual front door of our house. They'd just thrown it on and called it a day. Slepiak stroked the door with his long fingers, his wail slowly turning to a hum. He'd finally found the right door, the one he'd been looking for. I'll never forget that image for as long as I live. An ungodly creature breaking open the casket lid, pushing away a bed of dry blue sunflowers, lifting a long-forgotten corpse from its resting place, cradling it like a mother calming a crying child, its wailing turning to a quiet sob. "Ta-ta," he cried. "Ta-ta." Slepiak wandered off into the night, past the men with guns and those hunkering down in their houses. He did not care. Maybe he'd never cared. Maybe he'd just been angry that he couldn't find the right door. But as the chaos settled, there'd be no need to hide your doors any longer. Slepiak was gone. I sold my father's property, but kept the photo albums. His name is still spoken like a curse, but at least there's nothing to keep that curse alive. There have been no more sightings of Slepiak, as far as I know. The locals didn't want to point the fingers at the devil when they called the authorities. Some tried, but it's easier to convince people of a killer rather than a monster. There were inquiries about the countryside, but as with most things, it was left in an open-ended folder in an office somewhere. Unsolved, deprioritized. I returned to Warszawa. It might not be my home, but home is not just a place. It's a time. And that time has long passed. It has taken some effort to accept that for now, I might not have a real home, but that doesn't mean I'll never have one. much like Slepiak, I think there's a struggle in finding somewhere you belong. But over the southern countryside, the forest lies still. There is no wailing, no knocking, no screaming. And I think that somewhere, beyond the trees, anyone can find a place to call home. I'm at war with my neighbor. Written by I Go By KK. And before we get into this story, I just have to clarify a specific word or a specific term. It's a haint. And what a haint is a Southern American term for a restless, malicious, or evil spirit, derived from the word haunt, rooted in Galua Geechee and Appalachian folklore. And these spirits are believed to be vengeful souls of the dead, or witches that can bring harm or bad luck to the living. And now let's get into the story. I live in Appalachia. I've always lived here. I've always been aware of the haints that are my neighbors. They are aware of me too. When I was young, they used to terrify me. Eyes within the trees, whispers that sound like human voices mixed with the howling winds. When the birds go silent, you become acutely aware of the fact you are trespassing on your neighbor's property and you are not welcome. Unlike people, haints don't use guns to defend themselves. As I grew older, I grew a deep appreciation for them. This has been their home much longer than it has been mine. The Appalachian Mountains are older than we can dream of, older than bones and even the sea. When you're quiet and still, you can speak to the bones. The ground itself talks in a voice with no sound, communicating to your soul, not your conscious mind. When I first bought my own property with my husband, I made it clear to the haints I was going to inhabit the property as it was my own. I gave them gifts of milk and sugar, woven baskets, and carved charms set with the intentions and phrases my mama taught, passed down from the 10 generations my family had lived there. Then I set my wards, nails taken from the corner boards of my house, salted and blessed with my own blood. My husband isn't from here originally, so he thought it was a bit of an extreme response, but he didn't protest. He declined my offers to add him to the wards. I wasn't pleased with that. I'd no intention of forcing him, though. He didn't believe my stories for the first year. It wasn't until the things in our house would go missing, only to be shortly returned after I served up honey milk to the haint living with us, that he started to believe. He never confirmed it out loud, but the change in his disposition was clear. He began to fear the things in the woods. I told him time and time again there was no fear to be had as long as we respected them the same they respected us. Yet he still refused to be out past sundown. We no longer hosted bonfires or watched the fireflies after the trout-bellied sky sank beneath the horizon. I understood the fear he held. The paralysis of realizing you're being watched cautiously by things beyond your comprehension. The apex predator is aware of you, and you are stepping on its territory, and it may pounce at any moment. It wasn't until these screams started that I became nervous as well. I'd heard the screams before, almost woman-like, yet oddly inhuman. It had been many years since I'd felt the dread they inspired, the need to flee. My husband froze, still as a rabbit on its haunches, waiting to see what the hound will do. I guided his arm inside and locked the door, salting the windows and door. I was confident in my wards, but that did not mean I was somehow stronger than whatever this was. As far as I knew, the wards could be completely useless. The haints run by their own rules. The words of my father from childhood stuck in my head. That ain't how a woman screams. Go inside. He said it with such a serious face as if he was warning me, not just keeping me away from a fox or a mountain lion. When we heard the deer screaming in agony 2 days later, his eyes darkened and how he turned his back to the woods with resolve. He kept the shotgun by the door for a month after that, something I was now doing too. We lived that way for 6 months. This haint, unwilling to live amicably with me like so many others, terrorized my husband the most. He woke up screaming most nights, some night terror breaking his mind slowly but surely. I was beginning to grow angry. I had made good faith offerings, burnt meat in a fire just outside my bounds, honey bread and homemade meads, yet the haint accepted none of it. All was spoiled and rotten by morning, a rude rejection and a statement to me. It only stoked the flames in my own soul. This was my home, just as it was the haint's, and I would not allow it to terrorize my loved one. It began killing my chickens. That was when I decided it was war. I responded in earnest, upping my wards tenfold, saying nightly prayers, calling upon the friendly neighbors for aid. I did not like calling upon them. It always came at a cost. I was growing more rapidly aware of the fact that if I did not, this haint would kill us. It was not content to only feed off the discomfort. It craved the taste of flesh. My chickens were not a satisfactory substitute. I saw it for the first time 3 years into us living there. It stood at the edge of my wards, careful not to step over them, yet seemingly testing the bounds. Its appearance is difficult to describe, but I will do my best. Deer are prey animals. Their eyes are set on the side of their heads to give them near complete 360-degree vision. Their legs are made for running and hold immense ability to spring into jumps over creek beds or brush as they escape hunters. This beast did not hold those features. Its eyes were front set, pitch black with absolutely no glint as the porch light hit them. It stood taller at the shoulder than a normal deer, nearly as tall as the willow it towered near. Its mouth was wrong, slitted and barely masking the shape of sharpened teeth. It moved its head like a cat, cocked its head to the side like a dog, chittered like a fox, stepped like a mountain lion. What I found was most uncanny were its legs. They were not the slender, graceful legs of a deer. They were muscular. The legs of a predator, not prey. It pawed the ground with a ferocity that spoke to its power. One I did not want to cross. The antlers upon its head were sharper than nature intended, the shedded velvet coated with dried blood. I suppose this could have meant it sheds its antlers like a normal deer, but deep in my bones, I knew they were attached to its skull, like horns. I did something then that many would consider stupid. My husband was deep asleep, tired after a day's work and exhausted from the ongoing torment. So as quietly as I could, I slipped out the back door and walked to it. It seemed surprised I had chosen this route. It took several steps back, cautiously watching my hands as if I were going to pull a revolver and silver bullets from my pockets. I did not. I held the leftover pork from the night's meal. I placed it upon the ground and pushed it with a branch across the ward lines. It regarded me with interest, unsure of what my motive was. For the first time, it bowed its head and ate. I took it as a sign of a truce, at least in that moment. I spoke to it, introduced myself, my lineage, introduced it to the bones of my kin who now walk the deep earth of the mountain, same as the haints. I asked it as simply as possible, "What do you seek out of this?" Its head shifted and clicked, the teeth in its mouth showing as it was grinning. "I want him." The words took me aback. My husband, the outsider who had done no conceivable harm to anything here, who had been respectful as I'd told him to be, who'd followed every rule. Why? I did not bother to hide the shock or animosity in my voice. How well do you truly know the man you have bound yourself to? How much do you know of his history, of the path his kin has passed to him? How confident are you that man is a good one? You will find me when you decide. That is, if it is not too late." The voice that spoke to me did not come from vocal cords. It traveled up my spine, the voice of the grave dirt beneath my feet seeking revenge of ages. It regarded me one final time before its shadowy form sank into the darkness part of the tree line. I chewed on its words for several days, told myself that it was meaning to make me paranoid, distrustful of my husband. If that was the intent, it was working. I could not hope to view him the same way. I watched his every move and reconsidered everything he told me. I watched as he snapped at me over small things, something I'd once blamed on the haint tormenting us. I re-examined the ways he drank, unable to sleep or feel much without it. I considered the way he chopped wood, as if it had done something to him, an intense anger just underneath the surface. I listened to the words he spoke in his sleep, realizing they were not words in response to a hate, but something from his past. I began to wonder if the hate was his reckoning. I spent a month pondering what to do. I sat by my ward lines night after night, waiting for the hate to speak to me once more again. It never came. I could hear it, feel it just beyond the capabilities of my sight, even felt as if it made eye contact with it a few times. He's starting to become more paranoid of me as well. I feel his eyes upon me when my back is turned. I see the way his knuckles go white as he grasps knives at dinner time. I see the way his jaw tightens when I speak. I'm beginning to wonder if I've been fighting the wrong war. If the isolation I once considered sanctuary will become my grave. I broke my word last night. It was on pure impulse. My mama would scold me if she could see the way I went about it. Dug it up under the cover of night and felt the cold wash of the surrounding neighbors overtake me. I heard the sounds of the stag chittering with that fox-like voice. Then I went to bed. I do not know how long I have until this war ends. I do not know which side I am on. All I know is I clutch my protection necklace much more tightly, and I no longer sleep at night. I watch and whisper to the haints I call my neighbors. I'm at war with my neighbors, part 2. I think my wife is a witch. There's no other explanation for the things occurring in and around this house. We've been married for nearly 5 years. Moved to this house 4 years ago. Ever since we moved, things have been terrifying. When I met Lottie, we were both young. I was 22, fresh out of college with my bachelor's in business, excited for life. I grew up in the mindset that business expects constant work and fighting to up your sales numbers. I was popular, always taking out business partners for drinks and dinners. That all seems so unimportant now. I met Lottie one day at a farmer's market in the city. One of my partners had gotten wind that a semi-local farmer had the land and capacity to supply a new branch of the dairy industry in Appalachia, a near untapped market full of possibilities. Our pitches were going well. The board members agreed, and so we found ourselves at that farmer's market. Lottie was wandering the booths, examining every single item with as much curiosity as a child in a toy shop. I found it intriguing. I didn't understand how anyone could find something as a farmer's market that interesting. What, with it being all produce or grandma quilts, so I approached her. I thought I was sly when I was 22, but in hindsight, I absolutely came off like a snob. I think moving to the mountains has made me understand that at least. For some reason, she still humored me, chatted about the artsy and traditions passed down, how important it was to keep our kin alive through them. I thought it sounded like some hippie shit. It was hippie shit, yet it still made me feel something. I felt that warm blush in my chest that you get when you realize you're into someone. So I asked her out on a date. She wasn't keen to stay in the city any longer than she had to, so we agreed to meet in the next town over, which was basically a one stoplight town. It felt like stepping into a new foreign world. Our relationship only grew from there. She told me about her family, her heritage in Appalachia, all the folky things her mama would do. It was a definite turn on how passionate she was. I'd never seen someone with the same amount of passion as me, even if it was on a different subject. I didn't share much about my family. She would ask, but I set that boundary and she begrudgingly respected it. I didn't want to relive any of it or to subject her to that knowledge, so she agreed. We got married after 2 years of dating. Then we bought that damned house a year later. She talked me into living in the mountains. I didn't want to. I wanted to live in one of those tiny towns where I could easily drive to work. She insisted on land and being able to farm it. I insisted if we had something like that, I was not going to help with it. So we bought 10 acres and a shabby little house planted right in the middle. It was incredibly removed from everyone and everything around us. The water system was so old, it came from a well pump. She was weird when we first moved in, but I assumed it was from us finally owning a place instead of renting an apartment in the city. She was 2 years away from the woods at that point, so I just assumed it was a relief. I thought maybe we'd both settle into it. I was wrong. The first week there, she asked if she could take a piece of my hair and bury it. I was weirded out and said absolutely not. She looked disappointed, but she touched my face and smiled and just said, "Okay, hun." She knows it makes me melt when she does that. I saw her later that day, burying 4 jars around the fence line. I asked her what she was doing, and she told me her mama told her this was the first thing every new homeowner should do. I thought it was bizarre, but she had all kinds of odd Appalachian traditions, so I brushed it off. She kept telling me to respect our neighbors so they'd respect us. I thought that was an obvious concept, so I just nodded along, assuming this was her way of acknowledging the cultural differences and warning me from being a city jerk. I was polite whenever I saw them and even brought them green tea from the city I work in. Lottie seemed pleased. I figured I was doing everything right. 6 months in, I started hearing things. Whispers around the outsides of the doors, in the windows, and tapping on the front door. Lottie wouldn't even move her head towards them, just telling me, "Don't open the door," when I'd start towards it. I hated how calm she was. It was like this was just normal to her. I started seeing things a few months later. I was terrified. I thought I was losing my mind. Sometimes I still think I am. Lottie definitely saw them too. All she would do was smile and then go put out birdseed, like she was feeding the damn things. I grew more and more scared. Scared of them and the start of a nagging fear my wife was bringing them here. I grew adverse to being outside. Then the scream started. It sounded like a woman. It sounded like Lottie. I froze the first time I heard them walking in from the car, slowly turning to the tree line and looking for anything weird. It was dead silent and dark. Lottie was outside by now, and I felt relief she wasn't hurt in the woods. But then I realized if it wasn't her, what woman was screaming on our property? Lottie grabbed me by my elbow and practically dragged me inside. I was panicking by this point. Lottie walked calmly around the house, pouring salt everywhere. I asked her what the hell she was doing, and she looked at me in such a way that it's ingrained in my mind now. That ain't how a woman screams. Her eyes were darker than usual, set with a look that said we were in danger. I believed her. I scrambled across the house and grabbed our gun, checked it was loaded, and shakily stood in front of our door holding it. I don't know what I would have done with it. I've never shot a gun in my entire life. Lottie took it from me and set it gently by the door. I didn't sleep that night. I don't think Lottie did either, although it was hard to tell considering I sat watching the door while she went to bed. Lottie's chickens started going missing. She was furious. Kept muttering about this thing, and if it wouldn't work with her, then it could leave. I hadn't slept in months at that point. All my dreams were full of nightmares, things from childhood, things from adulthood, and the things I was witnessing now. That comment stuck with me. I thought on it for ages. What did she mean, work with her? Were all the things I was seeing working with her? What did working with her even mean? I started to distrust her, especially when I could hear her going outside at night when she thought I was asleep. I'd hear her outside talking to things and I'd hear voices in return. I didn't know whether to be angry or scared. I started to get snappy. I don't like being snappy. My father wasn't a good man, and every time I quipped at her, I just felt like I was becoming him. I don't want to be him. My mom isn't alive anymore because of him. He was sick. I'm starting to wonder if he passed the same sickness down to me. If the things I'm experiencing aren't even real, and I'm every bit as insane as my father. I don't understand it. I promised myself I'd never be him. I started to drink more. It was the only way I could sleep. She'd watch me do it with this concerned and soft look on her face, as if she wasn't the one putting me through 3 years of this hell. I found a therapist 3 years in. She's concerned. She knows my family history, and she talked about meds. Meds are probably good, but I was terrified if I took them, I'd wake up from my sleep one day to the things being inside my house. I found weird herb bags under my pillows, and that's when I realized my wife is a witch. She's a witch, and she's working with demons. The things I was scared of had already broken in, and my wife greeted them with open arms. I'm not a religious man. I know this seems so insane and out of place, but a month ago, she went outside at night, and I saw something. There is no atheistic answer. She was sat on the grass underneath this thing. It had to have been a demon. It looked like a deer, but so utterly wrong I can't even describe it. I think it saw me looking. It made eye contact with me and then disappeared. Those eyes have been in my dreams this entire time. 4 years of those tar black eyes terrorizing me. Lottie turned her head back to the house, and I just ducked under the kitchen sink. I don't know why I didn't want her to see me. It just felt like a bad idea. I faked sleep again, so when she came back, she wouldn't be suspicious. She's been acting weird ever since. She's treating me like I'm dangerous, or maybe like I'm something to be sacrificed. I've been chopping wood more to cope. It at least helps me build muscle if that thing attacks. I don't know what to do. What are you meant to do in situations like these? Divorce? Yes, I'm sure. Your Honor, I'd like to divorce my wife because she's a witch. We'll hold up in divorce court. I don't know. I feel hopeless. I feel like I'm going to die in this place. I think I'm going to die here. I need help. Please. I'm at war with my neighbor. Finale. I killed my husband. He's dead. The love of my life, the song in my lungs, the braid of my hair is dead, and I killed him. It's been a month since I destroyed my wards, since I sat on that cold ground and dug until the earth under my nails seemed as if it had always been a part of my hands. Since I took that jar and threw it into the rushing creek, shattering every hope of protecting the life I've lived for 6 years. Since the waters washed away what was left of my heart. He came home last week. Forest green eyes, red and swollen from crying while driving home. It's a miracle he hadn't crashed or fallen off the outcrop with the broken guardrail. It's been a week since he came home, and I held him for the final time. He arrived home later than usual, rushing in the door as if he was being chased. For a moment, I considered he actually could have been. Then he started packing a bag. He shoved his things in with such a panicked, frantic motion Those green eyes, once full of so much kindness and determination, were now only focused on escape. I asked him what he was doing. His gaze flicked up to me, as if he'd forgotten he wasn't the only one living in this house, as if he wasn't the only human. That dusty blonde hair he kept so carefully combed for work was a worried mess. Slight patches of strands missing, assumably pulled out from the stress of these past few years. I'm leaving, he choked on the words, although I can't tell if it was from anger or fear. I was beginning to be distraught myself, although I wasn't sure why. I made up my mind weeks ago when my feet bled, mixing in the water, creating swirls of blue and red. He snapped then, threw a bottle of pills at me, an orange bottle nearly empty, marked with his name, Grayson. The dosage for twice a day, 12 hours apart. I was confused and concerned. He said nothing, only continued packing. What is this? My psych meds. They were supposed to... His voice choked, eyes welling with tears. They were supposed to fix me. They're not. I can't be here. His packing now was slowing, hands shaking with the burdens of 2 decades worth of stress and sleepless nights. His crying became sobs, racking his body in heaves as he collapsed onto the quilt of my mama had gifted us upon our marriage. He held it with such grief, and I was at his side in an instant. My instincts were still wary, unsure if this was a trick or the start of the end, so I remained poised to move if needed. He laid there, letting me hold him, making himself as small as possible and hiding his face away from me. I'd only seen him like this after the nightmares these past few years. My chest ached with the love I had thought died a month ago. So we sat. I held him there for nearly an hour, my body relaxing into the curves of his own, soothing his back and brushing his hair. When he finally spoke again, his voice was rough and quiet, fearful of the words leaving his mouth. He told me the story. His father was a sick man, inflicted with an illness of the mind that left him unsure of what was truly happening. It had started with whispers, haunting his thoughts and senses with things just out of sight. He would grow angry at Grayson, accusing him of intentionally whispering, then lying to get out of trouble. Grayson spent many nights in what his father had dubbed the punishment room. He gave no further details on what that meant. His father's paranoia and distrust, as he started to see things hovering just out of his eye line. When looked at directly, they would disappear. With the growth in fear, his anger grew doubly as fast. Grayson's mother would try and calm his father down, but it was no use. She tried to help him. He refused, said there was nothing wrong with his mind and everything wrong with the family that was tricking him in this way. Grayson was 10 when it happened. His mother told him to run, so he did. He hid in the closet of their bedroom, tucked in the small fort his mother helped him construct out of their old blankets and scarves. He heard her scream. He heard the crushing silence afterwards. He heard his father come back to reality for the first time in years. He heard him break. It was only then he ventured out of his sanctuary. It was then he saw his mother. He told me all of this with a shaking voice, his full body trembling as if he was still there. It's happening to me, Lottie. I hear the whispers. I'm seeing things. You know that. I just didn't tell you about the rest. Why it's been torture for me. I'm getting help. I've been seeing a therapist. She gave me those meds a month ago. They were supposed to... The sob started again. They haven't helped the visions or whispers? I spoke softly, realizing what exactly the Haints have been doing to my love. He buried his head into my chest, nodding and holding me tighter. The worst part is I can't even trust you. He held me tighter then, as my heart rate rose and fear gripped me in its cold, ironclad hand. He reached under the pillow and pulled out a little bag I'd placed there 2 years ago. He sat up and held it, his eyes saddened and uncertain, fear creasing his forehead. I laughed. I laughed hard. The type of laugh that makes your breath go short and your stomach hurt. Loretta May, this isn't funny. I know what you've been doing. I know this is some kind of witchery, and you've been going outside at night and talking to those things. I know you know them. I know that you know that. He stopped as I cut him off. Grayson, open the bag and smell it. What? Open it and smell it. I don't get it. What's the smell got to do with anything? Laughter wrecked my body again. It's lavender. So? The smell helps you sleep. He looked at me shocked, as if he just discovered the concept of flowers being a soothing scent. Also, I'm not talking to anything at night. I'm praying and walking the property to make sure everything is all right. His expression held a disbelief hard to describe. He looked at me as if his entire worldview had just been scratched out with black ink and rewritten. I continued laughing before he laughed along and fussed that it wasn't funny. He was really scared I was a witch cursing him, and this was somehow the cause of his nightmares. We laughed deep for nearly 20 minutes, making jokes at each other and stealing kisses. It felt as if we were newlywed again. After we both managed to calm down, I explained to him in more detail the traditions that had been passed down to me. He understood my superstitious nature, but had never quite grasped why it was important. He listened in silence, seriousness creasing his furrowed brow, deadly still. I explained the nature of the haints, how he wasn't crazy and they were there. I asked him how he hadn't realized this when I spoke about the neighbors, and he looked at me, flabbergasted. I thought you meant our actual neighbors. You're telling me I've spent hundreds on green tea for the past few years, and it wasn't even those neighbors? Laughter wrecked both our bodies again. I was surprised how well he was taking this, all things considered. My shining boy smile had finally returned, full teeth showing, his second tooth on the left crooked as always. I didn't realize how much I'd missed that smile. I worked so hard to bring it back, yet it was all for naught. We talked for another few hours after that, before exhaustion finally claimed his poor body. He fell asleep on my chest, and for once, no nightmares haunted him. He slept deep and comfortable, hugging my waist as if he had never wanted to let go again, even in his dreams. I watched and held him for a long while, thinking back on all the time we had spent loving each other. I thought long and hard about the pains he'd endured, being subjected to a culture so foreign to him, he'd never even considered the folk tales may be true and guide our every moves. It was then that I remembered the stag haint's words, more so its lack of words. It hadn't suggested things about Grayson. It had planted seeds of doubt deep in my mind and chest, so much so that the wards that had kept it off this property for 4 years were now lying destroyed in cleansing water. I leapt from the bed, scrambling to find more jars and anything that could keep the house safe. Grayson woke with a start, following me around the house confused and disoriented. My wards are destroyed. His face paled, asking me what I needed, if we should call my mama, what to do. I ordered him to salt the windows and doors. We both went deadly still when we heard the scream. Grayson scrambled faster to salt the doorways, falling back as tapping began on the front door. My hands hurried as fast as possible, shaking as I pressed a knife against my left and gasped at the pain. I bled into the jars, Grayson trying desperately to staunch the blood as I scolded him off and told him to let me work. I sealed them, prayed over the lids, and took off running towards the back door. He was yelling at me, my sunshine, begging me not to go out there while it was so nearby. My mind had one focus, and it did not involve my safety. It wanted him. I dashed to the tree line, clawing a shallow hole in the ground and shoving the first jar down. The ground underneath my feet was warm and pulsing, living with the spirits of my ancestors and neighbors who had accepted my invitations to be friendly. As I ran to the next corner, the ground almost pushed me, pumping my feet faster than I thought possible of a human body. The ground was already open in a second corner, pulling itself apart with a wet squelch. I screamed a thank you, shoving the jar hard and fast downwards as the ground ate it whole. I was about to run to the next when I saw him. Grayson was in the yard, shouting for me to run. He had that silly shotgun my father passed to me, holding it tight as if he wasn't a city boy who couldn't fire a BB gun. Above him stood the stag. It was no longer on all fours, nor had it retained the grace of a deer. It was undoubtedly the same beast. Its jaw was unhinged, rows upon rows of sharp, serrated teeth lining all the way back into the maw. I realized then that it hadn't spoke to me in words due to the fact that the teeth continued deep into that dark abyss. The guttural scream echoing from its long neck was wet, wheezing, and horrifying. I froze. Grayson raised the gun. He got off one shot before it descended on him. The world felt as if it was in slow motion. I became unstuck as the ground beneath me lurched, forcing my feet forwards. I took off on a run towards the haint, towards my darling, knowing there was nothing I could do, but I'd be damned if I didn't try. I grabbed its terrible arm, feeling in my hand like sandpaper mixed with the wet feeling of a bloated body. It knocked me backwards, leaving a deep gash in my chest. I stumbled up, running back yet again, determined to not let this thing win. Its head snapped to me, closing back to almost be the deer it had met me as on that fateful night. It laughed at me. I could feel it laughing. You made your decision. You have found me, Loretta. It is too late. I did what any Appalachian woman would do in that situation. I punched it in the face. My hook caught it across the nose, the surprise sending it falling backwards. The ground moved yet again, pushing it further back. It's Lottie, motherfucker. It laughed again in indignation. We will meet again. And then it was gone. I held my boy. I held my love. I held my sunshine, my starlight, the water that gives the world life, those green eyes as deep as a forest in high summer. I begged him to stay. Screamed for help. Begged some more. He touched my face and smiled once. He smiled that wide smile, all his teeth on display. His crooked tooth now chipped and bloody. Then he was gone. My human neighbors must have heard the commotion and called the sheriff. He had to pry me off Grayson. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't see anything other than how his eyes no longer held the light of half my soul. It's been a week. It's been a week since I killed my husband. Since I held him as he bled out. Since the sheriff listened to my tale. And having grown up with me, knew it was true. It's been a week since the official death report dubbed it a bear attack. It's been a week since I decided my fate. I am at war with my neighbor. I know my side, and I do not sleep. I'm going to make damn sure that it doesn't either. And alright guys, that wraps up some chilling Reddit horror stories. I loved these stories in today's video. The first AI one was shockingly scary, and this last one, I loved both perspectives of both the people in the relationship. It was very creepy. Grayson, do you think this was all in his head, or do you think this was all in the OP's head? Lottie's head? I think it's just a very good story. And the second one with the doors in that town, that was very, very interesting as well. So comment down below your favorite story, and I read every single comment, so please comment down below and make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy other videos on the channel, so go check out those videos. And yeah, please follow my Instagram, follow me on Spotify, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It means the world. And yeah, this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Mysteries plague the internet. There are endless videos of strange clips, eerie accounts, and unexplained uploads. But sometimes you stumble upon something different, A piece of media so disturbing, it drags you down a rabbit hole, clue after clue, until you uncover something unimaginably horrifying. From a desperate father searching for his stolen son, to cryptic channels tied to horrific crimes, and to footage that shows people being exploited for profit. Today, we're diving into some horrifying internet mysteries. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let's get into it. Abzar Akbar. It's a warm, sunny day in Tianshu, China. Late September brings out nearly perfect weather here. There's almost no rain, and the temperature stays in the 70s. The town has beautiful temples, incredible caves, and breathtaking views. And on top of that, it's not a tourist trap. It's far from top destinations like Beijing and Shanghai. So on a wonderful autumn day, Tianshu is filled with residents walking around, getting some shopping done, or enjoying a nice dinner after work. They are living their regular life, not expecting anything out of the ordinary to happen. But Abzar Akbar just arrived from Bangladesh, and his life is anything but normal right now. But this wasn't always the case. Before traveling to China, Abzar had a peaceful life. He taught English as a second language, spent time with his family, and explored his home country of Bangladesh. He was happy, content, and making the most of every day. All of these experiences he wanted to share with the world. And this was back in 2009, when the internet was a little more wholesome, when the average person filmed a home video and posted it online for their friends to see, thinking maybe it'd go viral. Abzar was no different. He posted his first video on February 15th, 2009. He's standing on a hanging bridge in Rangamati, Bangladesh. The camera pans across the lake he's looking out on, small islands spotted in the horizon. The video quality is low, but his enthusiasm is not. Behind the camera, he gives interesting facts about the attraction and encourages people to visit.
Please come and visit. This is Alex here from Chittagong. Goodbye.
Then he spins the camera around and closes out. And he kept posting. He has videos on weddings, birthday parties, and food in Bangladesh. They were just ordinary videos about his culture. But his desire to share was short-lived. He posted 6 videos in 2009 and then disappeared. He went back to work, focusing on his students. The account was dead for 4 years. But his life was not put on hold. In that time, a lot happened for Abzar. His whole world flipped upside down with a new addition. On June 27th, 2010, his baby boy was brought into this world. He named him Washington, hoping that an Americanized name would benefit him in getting a good education. Washington was everything to Abzar, and all they had was each other. Shortly after he was born, Abzar's wife decided she didn't want a family. She didn't want anything to do with it, so she abandoned them. Her reasoning is unknown. All I do know is that this left Abzar overwhelmed. Now all of a sudden he was working full time, changing diapers, getting his baby to sleep, and making sure he was properly fed. It was a lot at once, and he wasn't expecting it. But none of that really mattered to him. Quote, "Washington is the apple of my eye," he said. He loved him more than he had loved anyone. They were best friends. He couldn't stand to be apart from him. It was a gift to be his father. But still, he wanted his son to have a relationship with his mother. His wife, or maybe his ex-wife at this time, was from Tianshu, China. So he hauled him up there to try and find her. They did this on 3 separate occasions. Each time, he would find his wife's mom or her friends, but not her. He was pissed off. It wasn't fair of her to leave, and he wanted answers. But that was the furthest thing from what he got. On a chilly winter day in early 2013, they were walking around downtown Tianshu. This was the 3rd time they went looking, and he was about to give up. But then, without warning, Washington watched his dad fall to the ground. Someone, a stranger to the child, had pushed him down and continued to beat his father. It all happened so quickly. Abzar had no time to defend himself. He just prayed and hoped that the attack would be over soon. And when it was, he opened his eyes and immediately looked for Washington. But his 3-year-old kid was gone. Nowhere to be seen. In the blink of an eye, disappeared. All of a sudden, Abzar was living in a nightmare. His whole world, his everything was ripped from his hands. Immediately, he knew who it was. While the perpetrator may have been a stranger to his son, Abzar recognized them. Friends of his ex-wife. She must have sent them. The person who abandoned his family now had torn them apart. He was a wreck, walking around with an empty stroller, not sure where to start in looking for his son. He got the police, desperate for help. He told them everything, how his ex-wife left, it was just the two of them for the last 3 years, how he loves his son more than anything, and he knew she was behind this. But there was a problem. No matter how much he loved his baby, or how beaten up he was, how distressed he wasn't from China. He was a foreigner. So, Chinese police didn't give a shit. It wasn't their problem. They said there was nothing they could do. And that was exactly what they did. Nothing. And Abzar couldn't stay in China long, as his visa would soon expire. He had to tear himself away. If it was up to him, he would stay in Tianshu and look for his son day and night. But he had to go home, and at home, he would figure out a plan. And in the next 6 months, that's what he did. He got back to China, stormed into the police station, and demanded their help. His son was kidnapped in their country, so this was their problem. They had to fix it. But it was like arguing with a brick wall. His first video on this was posted about 6 months after the kidnapping, after he had been back in China for 8 days. He's behind the camera, filming an argument between him and 2 officers. There's 2 issues right off the bat. Besides the fact that the police barely let Abzar get a word in, there's also a huge language barrier. Abzar speaks only a little Chinese, and the officers don't speak either of the languages he speaks, Bengali and English. Basically, they're getting nowhere. It's now been 6 months without his son, and Abzar is losing his mind. Law enforcement is doing absolutely nothing to help him, if they can even understand him, and he has to figure out a way to stay in the country for as long as possible, to do everything he can to find his baby. And that, he does. While police sit on their ass, he starts making flyers to distribute around town. He shows this in a video uploaded 2 months after the previous one. Watching it, it's like watching a man fall apart. He starts by walking around town, the flyers in his hand. Front and center is a picture of Washington, smiling at the camera. The first person Abzar walks up to is a young woman with a baby in the stroller. She takes the flyer and looks at it for a moment, while the camera pans over to the kid with her. They look up at Abzar with curiosity, not sure why he seems so upset. The shot lingers on that child for a little bit longer, and the more it does, the more I can feel Abzar's heart breaking, praying that he can have his son the way that woman can have her baby. He continues looking for more people though. The town is busy, and he's talking to everyone he can, hoping that someone, anyone can help. He goes back to the police station, looking for more answers, thinking maybe if he keeps showing up, someone will take him seriously. This argument is just like before though. No one can really understand him, and when they can, they just don't listen to him. Finally, they send him up to a different floor of the station, telling him someone up there will help. When he gets there, they begin to shut down the entire police station. He's enraged now. He starts letting everyone know how sick and tired he is of their treatment, shoving the flyers in their faces, yelling, crying out for help, demanding at the very least sympathy from them, asking over and over what they would do if their son was kidnapped. And they just walk away, ignoring him. barely giving him the time of day. It's cruel, cold, and heartless. But Abzar persisted. He continued to battle with the police, going back again and again, or visiting foreign affairs and looking for an answer there. He tried to figure out ways to work and stay in the country longer, but there was a problem there too. He had previously taught English in China for years, and that employer wouldn't grant him a letter of release, making him unable to find a new job and unable to stay in the country for very long. Again, he went to the police, foreign affairs, anyone to help, and there was nothing. No one gave him a solution or support of any kind. It was just arguments over and over. The whole country was against him. I'm not sure there was much else he could do. It's heartbreaking to think he may have given up, but sadly, we don't know what happened. He posted 6 videos in 2013 about the search for Washington. Then a year later, made a post dedicated to him when he shared the story of his birth and the slideshow of his favorite pictures of his son, then a couple more random videos on ordinary things from his life, then nothing. Nothing at all. His last video was posted on January 21st, 2015. It's just him filming a piece of hardware he bought for a new business idea, something to show to his students. Not a word about Washington, no hint as to what happened. That was 11 years ago. By now, Washington would be 14 years old, growing up, doing homework, hanging out with friends. Is Abzar getting to watch any of that? If it's even happening? It's terrible, but his son may not be living a happy childhood wherever he went. Or worse, not living at all. These are the thoughts that ran through Abzar's head the longer he was separated from his kidnapped child. The torment he went through as he begged police to reunite them. Going through his videos, it's watching a man go through hell, living in a nightmare he may still be living in. Did Abzar find Washington, or at least find out where he was, or if he was safe? Well, no one has any clue. There are a couple comments on his last video and some posts on Reddit where people talk about this, trying to dig in and find any details that give us an answer. But there's nothing. Just an inactive YouTube channel haunted by this tragedy. Imagine it's 2012 and you're watching YouTube. You've watched hours of epic rap battles, Smosh, and replayed Gangnam Style a couple of times. Before you log off for the night, you come across one more viral video. It's on a seemingly innocent channel, Little Baby's Ice Cream. The thumbnail shows a person covered in ice cream, and the video has a whopping 22 million views. So it's bound to be interesting. And well, it is. Within 5 seconds, anyone watching this is for sure to be freaked out. This person has their eyes open as wide as possible, like bulging out of their head, not blinking at all. As the ice cream drips down their face, they scoop it off and into their mouth, all while they stare into your soul. Then in the back, some creepy music that's being played in reverse. The video is an ad for a legit company, but the whole thing is downright weird. And oh boy, it's about to get even more strange. When 7 years later, someone resurfaced the video. Well, recreating it rather, putting a disturbing spin on it. January 5th, 2018. The first one of these emerges. It's a 34-second clip of an edited version of the ad, posted on a channel called Kinky Little Couple, with the title, "People Are Dying 1, 2. The creepiness is taken to a whole new level. Everything is slowed down, and the ice cream person now has all of their features removed. They're now just a white animation in front of a purple background. There's music playing, if you can even call it music. It more sounds like someone's stomach grumbling or some sort of weird internal noise. I don't know, that's the best way to describe it. And it's slowed down and really, really freaky. And it's menacing, ominous, and honestly terrifying. Here, give it a listen for a few seconds and just feel how unsettling this entire clip is. And yeah, like I said, disturbing. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This channel has 217 videos, all posted in early 2018. There's a lot of videos that are variations of that ice cream video. Some are pretty much the same, just different lengths and colors, but then one pops up that literally sent shivers down my spine. It starts out the same, but then there's a deep guttural moaning in the background. It's drawn out. You can't really tell if it's trying to say something or not. It's almost like trying to hear the last words of a dying man. But just as you think it's nothing, then it cuts to black. The video is over. Nothing else. No explanation. No hint as to who Clementine is and why someone is demanding her murder. And by the way, all of these clips have less than 1,000 views. The one I just showed you had like 15 views, which makes it even more unsettling because nobody is watching these videos. I don't know who it's meant for or anything like that. And for these just to be so underground and for no one to even know they exist just makes it that much more unsettling. It feels like I'm not supposed to be watching it. And the questions I have just get bigger and bigger. It's not just the ice cream videos, and it's not just this channel. There's 4 channels that seem to be from the same creator. I Want to Die, Tim Franks, Ben Knox, and the original Kinky Little Couple. All of them post very similar content. Besides the ice cream ads, there's probably 50 videos of clips from JJ's Jet Plane, an animated children's TV show from the 90s. The show by itself is innocent and wholesome, but of course, these aren't normal clips. They've altered the color and everything is pixelated and blurry. All you see is a cartoon plane with a smile flying around as an animated man watches him motionless. He almost looks like a toy soldier. And again, that deep, dark, and menacing background noise. And to top it all off, covering everything, are bold letters that read, "I'm watching you now." It looks like it's from someone's nightmare. And to be honest, guys, while I was researching this video and honestly recording this right now, I have never felt so unsettled and disturbed by a single YouTube channel than I have from this one. All of the videos are just so nightmarish. They are so terrifying, and I have covered numerous internet topics and some of the most disturbing things on the internet, and for some reason, this channel is just freaking me the fuck out. But let's continue. Then another common video found is a British animated PSA against illegal material involving minors. This one isn't edited in a similar fashion. Nothing is slowed down, and there's no deep voice in the background. Obviously though, it's incredibly weird that this channel is posting a PSA of this nature. It doesn't feel random. It feels intentional. In fact, the whole thing feels very calculated. When first looking at all of these channels, it may not seem like that at the first glance. It's hundreds of videos that look the same. It must be some bored, weird kid who discovered iMovie. I mean, that's an easy answer, but they're not all the same. In fact, they're usually different, even if it's in small ways. Why only some of them? It's like a puzzle, a never-ending puzzle. Because whoever this is doesn't stop at YouTube. There's Pinterest and Vimeo accounts under the name Kinky Little Couple, and a WordPress blog. The content here is different. One Vimeo account posts short clips of a solid colored background that slowly changes color as it goes on. That's it. No words, no sound, nothing at all. The other account posts clips from a Britain's Got Talent audition from 2014. The original video is very heartwarming. An 80-year-old woman and a younger man blow the audience away with their salsa dance. But of course, they had to make it weird. Again, they've distorted the color and also put it through some filters so it looks like you're watching it through a funhouse mirror. They've taken audio clips from the performance, but it makes it sound haunted and unsettling. Like you have no idea if you're listening to music or someone screaming under distress. And then there's the WordPress blog. The main header says Kinky Little Couple, but the blog itself is called Dead End with a bunch of random numbers at the end. It's one page, but they've packed in as much as they can on it. It starts out with some stock photos of a happy family, but as you scroll down, it's one picture after another of random old people. There's nothing wrong with these pictures, but why? Some of them are really goofy, like old women making silly faces. In any other context, it'd be totally fine, but this blog post isn't just stock images. There's one post, if you can call it that. It reads, "I found you. Everything is over. Good company makes the way seem shorter. Isaac Walton." At this point, all of this seems so jumbled, like nothing makes sense. It's all a bunch of bullshit trying to scare people, and finding an answer almost starts to feel hopeless. But then there's the Pinterest accounts. And at first, it seems like the same random shit with the same kinky little couple repeated everywhere. Again, pictures of old people, but also lots of animals, hairstyle ideas, and recipes. It's so close to being a normal Pinterest account. But of course, it's not. No. On one of the accounts, the bio says, "There is no excuse for SA." And the account username is "Stop Abusing Young Girls." Finally, it feels like there's a clue as to what the point of all of this is. Well, it doesn't feel like a stretch to assume Kinky Little Couple could be an actual adult content creator. So finding that out feels like the next step. Looking on the more popular adult film platforms, I didn't see an account with that name, but some videos attached to it. Going further through, I found tons of videos on one site that uploads stolen material from an adult content creator woman. So again, no actual account, but all of the videos are tagged as Kinky Little Couple. So there are real people behind the name. It's most likely this girl had an account years ago, but deleted it at some point. Now all that's left is pirated on other sites. But who is she? Well, one user on Reddit found a post on a website that reads, quote, "I was thinking of posting a few people I would love to spend one day with, but to be honest, I only need 2. I'm sure a lot of you haven't heard of her. Maybe you have, but Kinky Little Couple's Anna. She's a beautiful, extremely cute, sweet, lovable, perfect angel to die for." So is Kinky Little Couple Anna? Well, the comments say otherwise. Comments from people that have been digging into this. There are posts on Reddit that claim they found the original Kinky Little Couple account on the Wayback Archive, and there was more information about her, that she was an art student, and that her name is Clementine. Well, wait. You heard that right. Clementine. The girl that voice in the video wants dead. But what's frustrating is that I can't actually see this vital piece of info. Looking up exactly what other users looked up months ago only shows the pirated content, not the page on the Wayback Machine. But at the bottom of the search on Google, it does say this, quote, "In response to multiple complaints we received under the US Digital Millennium Copyright Act, we have removed 3 results from this page. When clicking on one complaint, I see that it was made shortly after these videos started to resurface and gain attention on Reddit. So is the archived account gone? Well, it seems like it, and that's the only verifiable proof of her name. Well, whoever found that name connected to Kinky Little Couple lets the user on the website know, posting, quote, "How do you know her name is Anna? People are saying her name is Clementine," which is a great question. Where did this user even get the idea that her name is Anna? Is there more information that's also being hidden? Well, another comment, quote, "She was forced into doing adult content stuff. She was R-worded, abused, and was locked into her apartment for days. She later committed S-word. But hey, I'm glad your tiny private part feels good." All of these weird, bizarre, and unsettling accounts, is there a victim behind all of it? An innocent girl in need of help? I mean, a comment on a random website for a bunch of pervs isn't exactly evidence, but it's horrifying to think about. And that commenter isn't the only one sharing this. There are multiple posts on not safe for work subreddits that are looking for Kinky Little Couple but can't find any of the videos. Users comment, quote, "Be aware, not only was that girl a minor, but she later committed S-word because of the abuse she was put through by that dude." Someone else says, "Oh, she committed S-word. The guy in this forced all this on her and abused the hell out of her. She was a good friend of mine." Both made by different accounts. One made a year before any of the YouTube videos or anything was released. So, I don't know. 3 comments about this girl being abused, hundreds and hundreds of disturbing videos, a blog with a threatening message. There's something so off about all of this. Of course, the people invested in this have tons of theories. Some say that it's an ARG, or that it's a real couple trying to cover up their intimate history. These do make sense in some ways, but they don't explain everything. At some point with an ARG, the creator reveals what it was. All of this was posted over 7 years ago, and that hasn't happened. And if it was this couple trying to deflect attention off their adult film content, it didn't really work. Everything is so terrifying and absurd that, of course, people are going to look into it. And then eventually they end up on a video they were trying to hide. I mean, it's horrific to think that there could be something evil behind all of this, but there's so many signs that point to that. Besides the obvious fact that there are multiple people saying she's been abused, it's even in the YouTube videos. In the PSA for illegal material involving minors, the narrator starts out the video by saying, quote, "The pictures I look at, the children are smiling. I don't get it when I hear people talk about abuse." Someone might think that when watching Clementine in her videos, she behaves like a normal adult film star, acting out all the things that, adult film stars do. But that doesn't mean that everything's okay. In fact, this could be said for anyone working in adult films, especially young women. Of course, anyone who watches this content wants to believe that everything is consensual and appropriate, but that's just not the case. Many women go into the industry as a last resort or coercion of some kind, and as many as 9 in 10 adult films contain violence in some way, it's only inevitable to think that in that environment, someone is being abused. So no, it doesn't seem like a stretch that kinky little couple, Clementine, whatever you want to call her, could be in trouble. The question is more of who's behind all of this? Is it a stalker, the other person in the couple, or Clementine herself crying out for help? It seems sort of unlikely that it's Clementine herself, but it could be considering how much attention this has brought to her. But it seems more likely that there's someone behind this who has some obsession with her, and they're expressing it in this morbid, terrifying way. Or, like a lot of people are suggesting, it's nothing at all. It's some weirdo trying to get the internet worked up and people are falling right into it. And I can only hope it's as simple as that. TikTok is home to thousands and thousands of videos, including get ready with me's, lip syncing, and dance challenges, or commentary on current events. It's the place so many spend hours doom scrolling before bed. But occasionally, when someone is in too deep on the app, they go beyond their usual harmless videos. They end up on the weird, freaky, and strange side of their algorithm. And once you're there, you're not sure how to get off. This is what happens when users stumble upon an account like Geka1201 example com2, and I'm just gonna call him Geka for short. Watching their first couple of videos, nothing seems too out of the ordinary. It seems like it's just a normal account run by a Russian user. The first video is someone filming a man sleeping on a couch and another man fixing a toilet. Based on Google Translate, they seem to only talk about the repair on the toilet. Just another random TikTok video. But things get unsettling the more you watch. The second video is an older man in a pretty much bare room, except for a couch in the corner. The audio in the back is an electronic dance song, something you might hear at a rave. The video is cut up clips of this guy dancing, which I guess seems unsuspicious on the surface, but not if you rewatch a couple of times. He looks exhausted, like he doesn't really know what he's doing. I don't know, he just looks out of it. But the more that I look at this account, I start to see that this video is nothing compared to some others that they've posted. The dancing continues, but it stops being just a feeling that something is off. There is definitely something wrong. It's not just that man anymore. There are a couple different reoccurring people. Sometimes they're dancing, or sometimes they're just sitting, talking, or eating. More often than not, one is dancing and others are in the background. Here's one example that shows how creepy this is. Two men are dancing along to a Russian song. One of the guys seems relatively normal, maybe just a little awkward. But then the other guy, there's something wrong with the other guy. He has a blonde wig on, a bra painted on his chest, and underwear over his pants. It could point to a unique way of self-expressing, but I highly doubt it, because there's also this girl in the back sitting on a wooden chair. She's staring off into the corner, almost like she's trying to avoid looking at the men in front of her. She looks absolutely miserable. She doesn't want to be there. That much is obvious. It makes the whole thing look staged, put together like an act. And if this girl doesn't want to be there, do either of these guys? It sounds crazy, but it feels more realistic the more I look at this account. In some videos, they have buckets over their heads or words painted on their body, and they either look uncomfortable in the background or they're in the front dancing, but look spaced out, like they're not all there. At this point, viewers are confused. The comments are filled with concern. Someone says, "I've said this so many times. I don't think they are okay, but how do we do something about it?" Someone else says, "This is that House of Horrors vibe. Anyone looking into it?" And another says, "Makes me wonder what he's making them do off camera." Users want to help these people immediately. It's not just the tired looks, the forced dancing, in the weird clothes, because if you look closely, these people don't look healthy. Many are covered in bruises, some looking very severe. They're along their faces, their heads, or parts of their body. Yet everyone in the videos pretends like everything is fine. They just keep going, swaying to the music, barely conscious or standing up, spacing out as the camera watches them. It's inhumane to film someone in that state, or worse, to force them to do this. That's not all that's being forced though. In some videos, people started noticing what they're eating. Sometimes it's normal things, like I noticed them having grapes, or often they drink beer. But other times they have bowls in front of them filled with cat food, cat kibble, the dry, brown, tasteless meal that we give to animals. These poor, bruised up, and bone-tired people are not only forced to dance for TikTok, but also to eat cat food. It's beyond sickening. But thank God users were catching on. They're going insane in the comments, trying to figure out ways to contact authorities in Russia and get this shut down. But then some figure out what's going on. And it's not so simple, because these videos are a part of a larger group of videos in Russia, Poland, and Ukraine. It's called trash streaming. It's basically a genre of live streaming where creators will have themselves or someone else do crazy, humiliating, or dangerous behavior in order to get a lot of views. This has led to incredibly tragic incidents, some resulting in death. There was one streamer who was just sick. He poured cold water over his girlfriend's head, locked her outside on the balcony in just her underwear, and left her to die of hypothermia. Then, like the disgusting human he is, he filmed her dead body after he just murdered her for views. So that's what these people are dealing with. Whoever is filming them is a part of this trash streaming culture, and they're forcing these innocent people to do these horrible things to get likes and donations. They are raking in money off their suffering. There's an article circulating on Reddit that talks about some of these extreme trash streaming incidents, including something that happened with the people in these videos. One of the older men was paid to drink an excessive amount of vodka during a live stream. His name was Yuri Dushakin. It's not clear exactly how much he was forced to drink, but it was enough to kill him. He passed away shortly after that. And who knows how long the stream was, but looking at some of the TikToks, people can see timestamps on the laptop of the person behind the camera. Sometimes they'll have been going for 24 hours straight. A whole day without breaks. Only given cat food and vodka. Forced to dance for hours and hours in humiliating clothing and body paint. There is speculation that these people are homeless, possibly living in poverty, and doing this for housing and food in return. Whether that's the case or not, it's still despicable. Everyone is deserving of food and shelter, and shouldn't have to be forced into humiliation and dangerous conditions in order to have them. It's diabolical. Exploiting these people for money, it's beyond cruel. And it's heartbreaking to think that these people may never have gotten help. Many of the trash streamers don't get convicted, and I have a feeling whoever's behind this is no different. In a couple videos, there's a paper on the wall with a YouTube channel name. The channel's videos are all in Russian, so it's hard to get an idea of what's happening, but it seems to be more podcast-style videos, much different than the TikTok account. But still, it seems whoever was behind Geka is also behind this channel. And while the last TikTok was posted 4 years ago in 2022, the last YouTube video was posted 7 months ago in June of 2025. So nothing happened. The monster abusing these people in the videos was never punished. Trash streaming started to lose its popularity in 2022, which not coincidentally is when the TikTok video stopped. And then the creator just went about their life and moved on to making different things. But what happened to the victims? Well, years later, no one knows. Were there more deaths that we aren't aware of? Were they just abandoned or thrown out into the street? Discarded when they weren't needed anymore? I hope they got out and found a much better life. A peaceful life where they didn't need to stay up for days, forced to entertain an audience that pays to watch their agony. And hopefully, whoever is behind Geka 1202 Example Com 2 doesn't make another cent off those videos. And alright guys, that wraps up some horrifying internet mysteries, and yeah, these mysteries were horrifying. These were some of the most disturbing mysteries I have ever got into and some of the weirdest internet media I have ever seen. And yeah, please leave your thoughts down below. I read every single comment and I'm very curious to hear what you guys thought of this video. And comment down below and let me know if you'd like to see another installment in this series. This is a brand new series, so let me know if you'd like to see another one. And please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy other videos on the channel. So go check out some other videos. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. It means the world. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.